Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled People Stories. Today we have a very special episode for you, a compilation of some of the best entitled people stories we've read over the past year. So sit back, relax, and enjoy a few hours of the most entitled people you've ever heard of. And by the way, Karen assured me that for every thumbs up this video gets, she won't try to get anyone fired for an entire week. So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. Karen wants a refund for her multi-thousand-dollar move because she doesn't want to pay taxes. So, tales from one of my jobs in customer service. I work for a moving company that also offers storage services as well. And no, it's probably not the one you're thinking of. This company has an international presence and covers most of the US as well. I specifically work in the claims and disputes department, far enough up the food chain that if you are talking to me, you are most likely going to have a bad day by the time we are through. Roughly 90% of the customers I deal with have their cases sent to me because they are terrorizing the people that work on my team. The remaining 10% either have unique and challenging problems or one of the other claims agents finally snapped, leaving me to a mess to clean up. So, July of 2020, in the middle of our busiest summer ever, that's triple threat because the normal summer rush plus masses of people moving due to lockdown job issues and all the people that normally moved in the few months leading up to our busy season but couldn't because lockdown, we were drowning. This case came across my desk because 1, the agent it was assigned to had no idea how to handle it, and 2, this woman was your atypical Karen. It was a pricing dispute. Typically our most common issue next to scheduling disputes because people don't think about the logistics of moving a 2,000 plus square foot house across the country. Now, normally for things that make it to my desk, I take the time to read through all of the agent notes to see what they've found or seen on the account, as well as what communications they have with the customer before I reach out or do my own investigation. But because of the literal flood of people, therefore flood of new cases coming in every day, instead of the normal 2-week turnaround time for case resolution, it was taking 2 weeks for initial contact from an agent, let alone a resolution after the investigation. Being as swamped as we were, I was calling people on my list going from oldest incident forward, trying to reach a resolution on my initial contact call because I had literally hundreds of new cases a day, which meant I was giving people money I would normally not give away. Normally, I would do a proper investigation and more than half of the people I talk with get their claim denied. So I call this Karen about her pricing dispute that got forwarded to me 2.5 weeks prior. I see on her account that she has been calling our regular customer service line daily, demanding to speak to the CEO or CFO of the company. Why they think they will actually get them is still a mystery to me. I also see from the agent's notes that she's claiming there's a difference on the price from what the document we sent to her was and what was being billed. Odd, but not impossible. Errors happen. But when the agent couldn't resolve her issue immediately, the exact way that she wanted, out came the craziness and demands to speak to their manager's manager. Joy, as if my day wasn't hard enough already. She picks up her phone. Karen. Hello? Me. Hi, is Karen available? Speaking. Me. Hi, this is me with the moving company, calling you on a monitored and recorded line about, insert reference number here, for your billing. OMG, it's about time you called me. You guys are so incompetent. Literally, all you do is steal people's money. My God, I was about to file a complaint with the Better Business Bureau. Me. My apologies. Unfortunately, due to the current events, there has been an unprecedented number of people moving, which has caused delays in every department, which is why I'm calling you today. I see that you've spoken to, insert other agent's name here, and you weren't able to reach a resolution, so this was escalated to me. I'm reaching out so we can try to get a resolution on this matter as soon as possible. Oh, good. Finally someone with sense in your company. So, you're calling to credit me back for everything I've spent with your company? Me, stopping dead, hoping I hear her wrong. Excuse me? Karen. That's what my dispute was for. Everything I have spent with your company for the last 3 years. I was originally going to do it with my bank, but my broker explained that a claim that large would mean having to close out, then reopen my entire account, and it would be so much easier if I handled it through your company, since you were the one billing me. I am floored by this, because this woman stored with us for almost 3 years before having all of her stuff shipped almost 4,000 miles away from her starting area. We're talking billing in the range of about $15,000. We are definitely not one of the cheap services in this field, and people usually pay the extra because of the reputation we have. Me. No. I'm calling you about the specifics of your dispute. I see you didn't give them to the other customer service agent when you spoke to them, or the other claims agent. What part of this isn't correct? Because from what we can see, all of your billing matches up with our order documents we have been sending to your online account like you requested. You know when people talk about something going from 0 to 60 at the drop of a pin? Yeah, she got on her high horse and did 0 to 120 in half that time. I legitimately had to take my headset off, holding it at arm's length, and I could still hear her screaming every name in the book at me. One of the perks of working from home is that now I won't have to live down the ribbing my team would have given me if this had happened in the office. After several minutes of this, she seemed to run out of breath, or hot air, and I was able to finally get a word in edgewise. Me. Ma'am, it's my job to find the discrepancy in the billing and the documents provided to you. And if there is a discrepancy in your favor, then credit you back for it. Now, which part of this are you showing a different amount charged versus what shows on your bill? This starts her in another tirade, albeit a much shorter one where she throws a mess of numbers at me, which is rather confusing to me as I'm not seeing any of the numbers she's giving me on her account before it clicks. Me. Is the difference you're seeing on your long-distance move this dollar amount? That's what I've been saying. God, you people need to learn to listen. Me. And is the difference you're seeing on these charges this? Yes. Oh, I see what the problem is. The document you've been referring to must have been a quote, because the difference in all of your billing is the taxes. You see, quotes don't include the taxes. If you look at the top of the quote, it says that in bold. So, credit me back the taxes then. You never said how much they were, or that you were taking them. Me. I apologize, but I can't do that. When you booked your order, the official document with all taxes, fees, and discounts was presented to you at that time. You've been charged the correct amount. Then get me someone who can, because I want my money back. You guys are nothing but a bunch of thieves. Me. Ma'am, there's no need for that kind of talk. Now, I regret to inform you of this, but nobody in this company can issue you a refund for this matter, as it's not a company policy or charge, but rather charges that originate at the state and federal levels. I hate paying taxes as much as the next person does, but if you have an issue with those charges, that is something I recommend you reach out to your state senator and discuss it with them. Karen. That is unacceptable and unprofessional. I demand to speak to your manager. Me. Yeah, that's not going to happen. See, I'm the highest level person in this company that talks to customers, period, full stop. There are exactly 4 people in this company that are above me. None of them talk to customers ever, and I have final say on any account or dispute in the company that gets escalated. Basically, I'm the manager you've been asking for, and I'm telling you no. We will not be issuing a refund on your account. This is unacceptable. I'm going to write bad reviews for your company everywhere and report you to the Better Business Bureau. Me. Go ahead. But so you know, any dispute filed to the Better Business Bureau or social media case open about this will come across my desk in about 2 weeks, as I'm the one closing this dispute, and we both know exactly how far that will get you. In addition, since all of our calls are recorded, any bad-mouthing you do on social media can and will be removed, as there is proof we have been more than accommodating with you in your frivolous demands. Fine. I'm just going to dispute everything with my bank. They will stand with me. They have been my bank for years. Best of luck with that, and have a nice day. Karen hangs up, and I get busy notating everything about our exchange on her account, as well as her dispute, close her dispute as denied, then send emails to our accounting department and social media manager flagging her name and account, listing the details of what happened. Now, this wouldn't be a satisfying r/entitled people story without the follow-up I got later. After my lovely conversation with this Karen in July, in early September, I got an email from our accounting department with a note saying she had tried disputing it with her bank, and when they had reached out to us about the matter, we provided them with all of the documentation for her billing, including the quote she had based everything off of that had the disclaimer about taxes in bold on top. Needless to say, she didn't win that. So all of her accounts had to be closed, then reopened for what amounted to a slap in the face. But wait, it gets better. Last month, I get an email from my social media team. She had tried filing a complaint with the Better Business Bureau, which was dismissed when we sent them a transcript of her call with me. Then she tried bashing the company on social media, which was also very, very short-lived, as the social media team responded to her saying something along the lines that taxes weren't something to be acting like this about. They had sent me a screenshot of the responses other people were making on her post that were just tearing her a new one before she eventually deleted it. Haven't heard anything else about this Karen, but with her antics across multiple departments, she did get blacklisted by our company. So I'm happy in the thought that I will never have to deal with this particular woman ever again. Have you ever had to pay taxes on something that really upset you? If so, what was it? Please let us know. Haven't we all, Reddit boy? Haven't we all? How fast was the heathen going when he backed into you, father? I'm going to be deliberately vague about places and exact dates, for reasons that will be apparent shortly. Any and all dialogue is to the best of my memory, and probably sounds a lot cleverer than it really was. But isn't that always how one remembers these things? Background. This was back in the 1990s. I had recently been medically retired from the military and was attending college in Texas. My wife was working in her chosen field while I did my level best to decide what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. Anyway, one day I left the campus, going around the backside to avoid the traffic. I was heading over to pick my wife up for lunch and ended up sitting behind another car at a stop sign. The car in front of me was a brand new Chevy, one of their little crappy models. The actual trade name escapes me at the moment, in candy apple red, being driven by a fairly new blonde, also a little crappy model, whose name will also slip by unuttered. I sat, an old sailor in an old pickup, just listening to the radio and thinking about lunch, when the Chevy drove into the intersection and then stopped. I didn't think anything of it, so I hadn't done more than put my hand on the gear shift in preparation of pulling up, when suddenly, with a suitable squeal of tire, the Chevy shot back at me. I slapped the shift into reverse, but was too late. The little Chevy smashed into the front of my truck, doing around 25 to 30 miles per hour. After a second, I cut my engine, got out of the cab, and walked around to the front of my truck. The good news was that I could see that I wasn't going to have to worry about that loose belt squeal anymore. The bad news is that the front of my little pickup was pretty much totaled. Grill drove back into the radiator, water all over the pavement, headlights smashed. I bent down and noted that there seemed to be oil leaking as well. With a sigh of total incomprehension, I walked further up to the passenger door of the little red Chevy and its blonde driver. I was upset, but not enraged. I guess I was still trying to figure out exactly what had happened and why she had ended up stopping in mid-turn and put it in reverse like that. I looked through the tinted windows and she was on the phone, talking agitatedly to someone. With all the cell phone silliness I'd been seeing since leaving the military, seeing her yapping on one really didn't surprise me. Although, had I thought about it, I should have wondered who exactly she was calling. Instead, I tapped on the window and she turned a bland face to me, then screamed into the phone, loud enough to break the glass. "Oh my God, he's got a tire iron!" Naturally, I spun around and looked behind me. Then the nickel dropped. I turned in a slow circle and noted that there were no businesses, houses, or apartments in view, nor was anyone on the sidewalks or walking down the roads. For that matter, the only traffic was several blocks away in any direction. Her little car was sitting at the stop sign almost exactly where it had been when I pulled in behind her. I stepped back and looked at our vehicles. Yup, it looked for all the world as if I'd rear-ended her. Dang it, this little jerk had set me up. I quickly walked back into my truck, thinking as fast as I could. Any minute now, a police car was going to show up, called by the little blonde, expecting to find a crazy man with a tire iron. And I dearly needed to not be that man. I pulled my tire iron out from behind my seat and threw it as far as I could into the nearby field, then jumped into my truck. It was a slim chance, but the only hope I had. I made sure the truck was in reverse, then belted myself in, slammed my face into the steering wheel, opened my door, and heard sirens not too far away, and half slumped out of the open door at an uncomfortable angle. I went limp just as the police car screeched to a halt. I ignored the policeman screaming at me to get out of the truck, trusting that my limp body would not move him to open fire. He finally edged his way over, noticed the bloody nose, tugged at an eyelid. I made sure my eye was well rolled up, and let me drop back into position. I stayed limp while he checked on the blonde, who was near hysterical with fright over the lunatic with the tire iron. Until she saw me, that is. I'd hoped that her rearview mirror was as off as it looked, or that she'd be too involved with concocting her own story to notice what I was doing. At seeing my body hanging limply below the driver's door of the truck, she stammered to a halt. A second set of sirens had been getting closer, and the policeman told the now silent blonde to stay in her car. A few seconds later, someone cut me out of my seatbelt and laid me on the ground. A competent set of hands checked my vitals, and within a few seconds, a harsh and demanding smell flooded my clotting nose. I fought it for a few seconds and made a pretty good display of a man coming around after having been knocked out. I immediately made to throw myself to the side and stopped, half being restrained and half staring wildly around to see what had happened. The medic sat back when I sat up, looked at the front end of my truck, and moaned, "What the heck did that idiot do to my truck?" He told me to lie back down and started asking me professional questions about where I hurt and could I feel my toes and all that crap. Every few seconds, I'd look back at the wreck and mutter about the idiot backing up like that. And what the heck had he been smoking? Little bits of angry stuff. The policeman, having gotten the blonde's statement, walked over and asked me if I felt up to talking. I said I felt fine, just a little sore. The medic okayed it and helped me to my feet. I gave the officer my license and proof of insurance and included my retired military ID card, then sat on my front seat and, as if I just noticed it, asked what had happened to my seatbelt. He explained that I had to be cut out of it, and I shrugged. Just another item for his insurance company to pay for, I guess. What the heck was his story, officer? Why did he just back up that way? The policeman looked sharply at me and asked me what I meant. I described exactly what had happened, but concealing the fact that I knew that it was a female driving the Chevy and kept referring to her as him. After I got done and he'd finished writing it all down, he asked if I had any proof. Proof? What do you mean proof? I frowned at him, then let my jaw drop a bit. Hey, wait a minute. You ain't telling me that idiot is saying that I did this, are you? He admitted that the other driver's story was that I'd rear-ended her, not him, and then threatened them with a tire iron. I frowned again and informed him that I didn't have a tire iron, that it was sitting in the garage of my house a couple of hours away. I moved aside as he searched the cab of my truck and caught a lucky break when he noticed, without my having to point it out to him, that my truck was still in reverse. He got out of my cab, frowning, then asked me to stay where I was and walked up to the Chevy. He then asked the blonde to step out of her car and, when she had done so, leaned into the open driver's side door. After a few seconds, he stood back up and asked the girl to repeat her statement of what happened. It was a marvelously teary bit of acting, but she almost blew it by, being somewhat puzzled when he didn't react. Instead, he asked her to go on and describe everything that had happened after the accident and everything she had done then. She backed down from the tire iron story, saying that it might have simply been a reflection in her window, but insisting that I had at least beaten on her window and that I had simply been putting on an act for their benefit. The policeman looked over at the medic, who slowly shook his head. Years of doing search and rescue might not have done much good for me, physically, but I sure as heck knew what an unconscious man acts like. The policeman then asked her if she had tried to drive away or had she immediately shut off her engine. She said that the engine had died and, no matter what lies I'd said, that she had never tried to leave the scene of the accident. The policeman nodded once and asked the medic to step over. He then asked the medic to sit in the Chevy and confirmed that it was in reverse. I love smart people. I didn't even have to suggest he check. When I last saw the little blonde, she was honestly crying. She was also handcuffed and being driven away, arrested for making a false police report, some legal mumbo-jumbo about trying to run a con, and, my favorite part, assault and battery. When she had realized that she had blown it, about the same instant she was handcuffed, she started weeping and explaining that she didn't have the money for the payments on the car and that her only option was to fake an accident, but that I'd been faking too and hadn't been injured. You gotta believe me, she wouldn't lie about that. I signed my name to an almost letter-perfect statement of events over at the police station, being careful to never mention in my own statement about how my nose got banged up or how I'd ended up unconscious and hanging out of the door. The arresting officer's report, as well as the EMT's, had already noted that it appeared that I'd either been partially ejected by the impact or might have been trying to get out of the truck at the last moment. I've always believed that one should never sign one's name to a false statement. Wisest in the long run, don't you think? Turned out that her car insurance was good, however, and they paid for my little pickup's repairs. The damage wasn't as bad as it originally looked, thank God. A little front-end work, a new radiator, and assorted other dinged or dented gizmos. A little cosmetic surgery to make her outside look right once more. Heck, the mechanic is even going to toss in a full overhaul including fixing that darn fan belt. I had to drive a loaner for the next week, also care of the blonde's insurance, and the irony of this will make you laugh. It was a little red Chevy. Nice car, and my wife and I had a ball riding in it, but way too expensive for a guy like me to drive every day. Heck, a car that nice might have made me try something stupid to make the payments. Calling the cops on entitled mom and kids on my property. So my husband and I purchased this home less than a year ago. It's an old Victorian house with a wraparound porch that was completely gutted and updated from the plumbing to the electricity, and the yard completely landscaped. The front yard has a huge tree, and my husband had a swing installed on one of the branches last summer. I say this to say that even though it's cold, icy, and snowy outside, it's still enticing to kids, as all the snow in the driveway has been moved to where the grass would be, and it's like a big hill of snow and now ice. We have an 8-foot gate surrounding our property and a sign on one of the brick columns at the entrance that says "No Trespassers." So I was getting a little cabin fever, and nothing I do was making my infant daughter stop crying. I just felt like she had it with being in the house, so I wrapped her up really well in the snowsuit and a blanket, and I put her in a stroller and I put my coat on, and I just thought I'd go out and take us for a walk so we could see something other than the yard. I thought I'd walk a few blocks down to a local coffee shop and get me some coffee and walk back home. I did just that and left the gate open to the property because I was just going to be gone 30 minutes tops, and we've never had a problem in the year that we've been living here leaving the gate open when we left the house. When I come back, I see this woman on my porch with her kids playing in the snow in my front yard. Me: hello? Karen: hello? Me: this is not a park. This is a private property, and you're trespassing. Please leave. Well, you have this big yard to yourself. You could at least share it. My kids don't have much room in their backyard to play, but you have a swing and everything. Me: so sorry, that is not my problem. But if you don't leave, I will call the cops. I don't have time for you, Karen. My name is not Karen. It's Melody, and you don't have to be rude. Me: you don't have to be trespassing on private property either. There's a sign right at the gate that says "No Trespassing." Apparently, you think that because you have kids, you have a right to come on my private property and treat it like it's a city park. I proceed to call 911. You can't kick me out. I used to play here all the time as a child, and the other owner used to let me play here too, and my kids. Me: yes, but we're the new owners, and we're not allowing that. If anything happens to your kids on my property, my husband and I are responsible for it. Whether you're here or not, I'm not having it, so take your munchkins and get off my property. My daughter is less than 3 months old, so I think it's more important to take her inside than to deal with Karen. So I pick up her stroller and I take her in the house, make sure she's warm and safe, and give her to my husband who's working from home. Note: my daughter was fine. She was fast asleep through this whole thing. The cops show up and tell her that she can't be here because it's private property, and I reiterate in front of them that she is never allowed on my property, and if she ever comes back or her kids come back, I will press charges for trespassing. My husband was on the conference call and couldn't come to find out what the commotion was about, but I told him afterwards. I'm hoping all my neighbors are not like this. The cheerleaders can break dress code because they're school uniforms? Guess I'm wearing mine. Way back in 2013, I was a sophomore in high school, and there was a tradition that on Fridays, the cheerleaders, football players, without their pads of course, band members, and the other groups performing wore their uniforms to class. This wasn't a written tradition, and only the cheerleaders and dance teams' uniforms broke dress code. Nobody really batted an eye to it. I wasn't a skirt person, but I liked dresses once in a while. As one can tell by my user, I grew up in Texas, and it's still significantly hot in August and September. So one time while wearing a casual sundress in September, I was pulled out of class and reprimanded because the end of my dress was 4 inches from the knee, when the dress code said no shorter than 2. I pointed out the cheerleaders and dance team uniforms every Friday and how they reached mid-thigh at the longest, but was told that was okay because students can wear official school uniforms, and was sent home to change. Clearly, somehow, someone had forgotten I was on the golf team. Immediately, my mind was turning to the next Friday. The school had recently upgraded the golf team uniforms the year prior, and the girls' team uniforms consisted of a short-sleeved collared polo shirt and a skirt. If you don't know what a skirt is, it's essentially a skirt and short shorts combined. It looks like a skirt, but they essentially act like built-in bike shorts. and these were short. I'd argue shorter than the cheerleaders. So that next Friday, about 3 days later, to my parents' surprise, I was ready to go that morning in my golf uniform, as compared to taking a bag to keep the clothes in to change into after school. But I just said, Fridays, we can wear uniforms to class, and they accepted without question and took me to school. Well, by second period, I was sent to the office yet again, and the first thing the assistant principal asked me was why I would deliberately disobey her right after our last conversation and threatened in-school suspension. I'll never get anywhere in life by not listening, yada yada yada. When I finally had a chance to get a word in, I said, "But this is my school golf uniform," and I pointed to our school's logo that was sewn into my polo shirt. "You said students can wear official school uniforms to class. Why are the cheerleader uniforms okay and mine isn't? This isn't even a skirt. It's a skirt. It has pants." I still remember how upset she was. She stared me down for what seemed like a millennia. Then she snapped and told me to get out of her office and go sit in the lobby area. That I knew what she meant and she would be calling my parents about this blatant disrespect. So I waited and played on my iPod and chatted with a nice secretary, trying to keep myself distracted, because in reality, I had really been trying not to cry. I had massive anxiety when it came to authority, but I still had my naive sense of injustice, and I didn't want to just let this go. After about 20 minutes, she popped her head out and in a very monotone voice told me I could go back to class and to let teachers know I had gotten permission from the front office to wear my uniform. Then she went back in and closed the door before I could even think to respond. I spent the rest of my day dealing with teachers questioning me about my outfit, and one or two calling the front office to double-check my claim that I had in fact gotten permission, and went to practice after school as normal before being carpooled back home. My dad met me at the front door with a small smirk, and I asked him what in the world happened because I knew he was the go-to contact for my school, so I knew she called him. He explained that when she called and tried to get him to come up to the school and get me and talked about punishments for my insubordination, he immediately began to argue with her and admitted he raised his voice quite a bit, asking why I wasn't allowed to wear my sport uniform that the school provided to me as a dress requirement at my golf practice, and mentioned taking this all the way up to the school board and resolving this obvious favoritism. He then asked me not to do that again, but that he was proud of me and told me, "I know I had told you never to start a fight, but to always fight back. I always thought physically, but you dang sure took the advice." Edit. I'm sorry for hurting my fellow 20-somethings with a reminder that 2013 was 8 years ago. Please don't look for gray hairs in the mirror for too long. Edit 2. An even deeper apology to my 30 to 60-year-olds who I offended even further with my edit. Am I the jerk for refusing to tutor a family friend's son because they won't pay me enough? I, 20 male, am currently on my second year of university. I study physics and I absolutely love it. Anyways, a couple of months ago, Mother asked me if I was willing to tutor her friend's dumb son, who's in high school and struggling with physics. My schedule was full, but eventually I begrudgingly relented. I went there, we do our lesson, 1 hour of pure heck, and then comes the moment to get paid. The mom looks angrily at me and says, "Here's the amount me and your mother agreed upon," and hands me 10 euros. I'm confused. I clearly remember telling Mother my hourly fee is 25, but take the money nonetheless and walk out. When I get home, I call Mother to ask about it. She says, "She's a dear family friend. You should make an exception for her." I roll my eyes, but agree. She's a family friend. Maybe I should give her a discount. So for the next month, I tutor the offspring, and I get less than half of my normal pay. 2 weeks ago, we had to switch to online tutoring because of hardening lockdown regulations. I did what I had to do, and before I closed the call, the hag said, "By the way, I will be paying you 5 from now on. Online tutoring isn't like normal tutoring, and he's not getting any better, so why should I pay you?" I was taken aback. I told her this wasn't acceptable, and if she wanted to continue our lessons, she would need to pay me my normal, reduced fee. She complained, "But 10 is too much." I couldn't hold it in. Weeks and weeks of underpaid, mind-numbingly frustrating work bubbled up, and I exploded. "Listen, 10 is already nowhere near what I normally charge. You already get a discounted price just because my mother went over my head and decided that this was acceptable. As for your offspring not getting any better, I'm a student with an average grade of 30 with distinction. In my country, 30 is the max grade at uni. I'm a tutor with dozens of clients who can vouch for my professionality, and I have several professors who can vouch for my competence. I am not the problem. Your son simply isn't interested in getting better. So from now on, either you pay me my full price or I just drop you. Be grateful I'm not making you pay me back what you owe me." I hung up and stormed out. Mother called me soon after, yelling that I was rude and I shouldn't have made such a scene given that tutoring isn't my job, and how bad I made her look in front of her friends. I countered, saying that it doesn't matter it isn't my job, it's about the principle. I do something time-consuming for you. You pay me. End of story. She didn't listen and kept on berating me and wailing about her ruined social image. I hung up. Over the course of the last week, I received texts and calls telling me I went too far. I should have just taken the money and not been such a jerk. The only people that have my side are my dad and my girlfriend, who tell me that I've done nothing wrong. But I no longer know if that's true. So I come to you, people of Reddit. Am I the jerk? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his mom and her friend? Please let us know. I'm actually really proud of OP for standing up for themselves like that. Good on you, OP. Good on you. Civilian wife demands salute because of her husband's military rank. There are a handful of rules to saluting in the American military. The when, why, and how is drilled into you from boot camp until the day you leave. Even the order in which the salutes are rendered have meaning. When it comes to vehicles, there are helpful insignia and stickers to indicate if it's an officer, such as a colored sticker located on the front windshield. My base was small enough where it was everyone's job at some point to do sentry salute at the front gate, which had housing for military families. Sentry duty was pretty basic. You'd stop every vehicle, check IDs, and then wave them through. If they were an officer, you'd see it coming with those colored stickers, and after verifying the identity of the officer, you'd salute and send them on their way. One day while on duty, I approached a vehicle with an officer sticker, and there was only the officer's wife driving in the vehicle. I returned her ID, wished her a nice day, and waved her through, pausing with a stern look. "Where's my salute, Petty Officer Citizen Alpha?" Now, Karen here was wife to a higher-ranking officer and has clearly fallen under the impression people are saluting her somehow along the way. Some of the junior enlisted might have even been saluting her as they're pretty easy to bully and pretty prone to mess-ups. I politely replied, "Ma'am, salutes are only rendered to commissioned officers," angrily pointing her chubby little fingers at the front of her windshield towards her husband's officer sticker. "I have a sticker, and you need to salute the sticker." Curtly, I continued, "I'm afraid that sticker is not an officer either." Frustrated, she pulled through and left my post. My cover guy, the guy keeping me safe with a big gun, and I watched her drive down the street and pull right into the administrative building with the top brass and huffed into the building as quickly as her soft body would take her. We exchange a look between us with wry smiles, knowing exactly where this is probably going. Later that day, we get a new official base-wide mandate. From here forward, all enlisted will salute vehicle stickers of officers regardless of who's in the vehicle. Roger that. This is where the malicious compliance comes in. It's worth noting that when you salute an officer as enlisted, you do it first, and you hold the salute until you are saluted in return, and they lower theirs. Only then do you lower your salute. It signals that you're saluting them and they're replying. Additionally, when saluting a group of officers, you generally direct your salute and greeting to the highest ranking individual. Now, as far as I know, this stupid sticker salute order has no accommodation for how a 2004 Toyota Camry fits into the officer's pecking order. Additionally, if the car is unoccupied, it's not like that sticker is removed. After that order came through, we all began saluting stickers. Personally, I'd direct my salute to the sticker. I would also prioritize sticker salutes over officers. Let me tell you, walking through parking lots was a blast as I saluted empty cars on my way to wherever. More and more people saw me doing it, and more people started doing it. Not long after, the order was publicly rescinded, which hilariously had the balancing effect of never rendering a salute to anyone but a clearly known officer, cementing Karen never getting her unearned salutes. Have you ever been in the military, or how about anyone you know? Please let us know. I know you were, Mr. Reddit. Legend has it you knew the best places to hide and sleep. I did what my mom told me to do and got revenge. So just some backstory here. My parents divorced when I was just in kindergarten, so no more than 6. My mom got full custody of us, and she suffered from mental illness. I believe she has borderline personality disorder, and she was also a typical narcissistic parent. Anyway, ever since the divorce, she would always tell us that it was not her fault we didn't have enough money for things and blame my dad. Example, If there was nothing to eat for breakfast and we complained like small kids do when we're hungry, she snapped, "It's your father's fault, so cry to him." I just learned to never complain and to do without, and spent my childhood taking care of her. My sister and I were trained from when I was about 8, my sister 10, to come right home from school and do our homework and clean the house and take care of ourselves. Don't ask mom to make dinner, make it yourself, and all of the chores so mom doesn't have to do anything. It sounds bizarre, but we thought that was normal, as well as being told on a daily basis that we were worthless. It got worse my senior year of high school. My grandma passed a few months before that summer, and my mom quit her job and blew through the money my grandma left her before the summer was over. This was close to $75,000 back in 2000. She refused to get another job and kept coming up with excuses not to work. "I need a break. Get off my back. I hurt my leg," etc. While she was going out drinking with her friends and acting like a carefree teenager. So I spent my senior year working hard at school, at my part-time job after school, and pretty much taking care of an overgrown child who refused to work or help out. Anytime a utility got shut off or there was no food left in the house, she just griped, "You have a job? Why can't you pay it?" If I brought up the fact that my dad sent her child support, she would just complain that she had my sister's tuition, which I later learned was BS. She would flaunt that child support check and laugh and refer to it as "mommy's paycheck." Flash forward to when I'm about to choose a college and my mom keeps belly aching about the costs and of course has zero saved in a college fund. I couldn't afford a private university since I was only offered a partial scholarship, so I decided to go to a reasonably priced and still highly regarded state university. My freshman year, I was pretty much able to swing the cost of tuition and room and board. I lived on campus. Since last year of high school, I filed my taxes and FAFSA as soon as my W-2s came in, so I had a decent amount of grants. During my first year of college, I almost became unable to receive financial aid for my second year of college. Why? My W-2s were mailed to my home address, and my mom, being the caring and supportive mother she was, shredded them and threw them in the trash. I found out because my sister was home that weekend and saw it. My mom denied, and when I came home for spring break and pressed her for it, she lied and said her friend had them. Her friend was a CPA. My sister called my mom out on this bluff by calling the friend who said she did not have any of our tax information. She was very concerned and told me and my sister to request duplicate W-2s and have them sent home, and she will have my mother send them over to me. My mom was angry that we had checked with her friend and called her out on our bluff, but true to her word, her friend did my taxes for me and my FAFSA. I had offered to pay her, or at least babysit for her, but she told me it was okay. I think she knew my mom was mentally unstable and felt sorry for me and my sister. At this point, I learned that my mom had not been helping out my sister at all with tuition, like she claimed, and my sister had mentioned it to my dad, who had called her out and demanded to know where the child support was going to. My mom insisted he wasn't paying her enough money, and that's why she couldn't help us out. During my second year of college, my W-2s were once again sent home, and my mom once again accidentally threw them in the trash. I had to request duplicate W-2s for my summer job, not just once, but twice, because she kept throwing them in the trash. I filed my tax return late that year, and as a result, my FAFSA was filed late, so I wasn't able to get the full amount I was receiving before. Anytime I complained to her about money or no food in the house, it was, "Complain to your father." Well, the summer before my third year, I was burned out on my mom's BS. I was working full-time for the summer and saving as much as I could, but she was refusing to help me out at all while I was home with food or anything. She was upset that instead of paying the phone bill so she could make long-distance calls to her online friends and spend all day in chat rooms, this was back when we had dial-up, I had the audacity to spend my hard-earned money on a cell phone and pay that bill myself. She told everyone I should just drop out because I wasn't applying myself hard enough. I was in the honors program, and she would play martyr with all her friends about, "It's so hard when you have kids in college and they eat all of your food and come to you for money." At the end of the summer, I had saved $1,000, but the school won't let me move into the dorm unless I paid 50% up front, which was about $10K. I didn't know what to do, as all summer the university had told me I was fine, and then on move-in day told me I couldn't move into the dorm. I called my dad in a panic, and he spoke to someone who agreed to give me 24 hours. I moved in, and the next day my dad showed up first thing with a coffee and a donut for me and told me not to worry. He was going to fix this once and for all. He went from office to office on campus and co-signed a loan, which he later paid off for me. And then he paid the balance on my tuition for the loan didn't cover. He then took me out to lunch and told me the truth. My mom never helped my sister with her tuition. My sister had graduated the summer before my junior year of college. My sister later confirmed this, but was not surprised my mom had lied. My dad had co-signed loans to help my sister out, which he paid off later for her, and my sister was able to get a scholarship and do co-op to pay for her last 2 years. He also advised me that my mom was not so poorly off. As part of the divorce settlement, he had to pay the mortgage and property taxes on our house, and even though my sister was now out on her own, he was still paying her the same amount of child support of about $2,000 a month, despite the fact that I was living on campus for 75% of the year and my mom was not giving me a dime. Just to give you some clarification, my tuition and room and board before financial aid kicked in was $15,000 a year, so she could have easily helped me out with school since after financial aid kicked in, when I was able to get it, the balance was usually $6,000. I was hurt to think my mom was just living off my child support and constantly making me feel guilty for wanting anything or not being able to cater to her every whim. She would get upset that I wouldn't come home on the weekends to help her clean the house that I was not living in. I thought about how bad she made me feel growing up and made me feel worthless, when in fact, had it not been for me or my sister, she would have not had a roof over her head after the divorce. He asks me to grant him access to my account so he could prove my mom was not paying for college and that I was. He asked me how I would feel if he took care of college instead of paying my mom child support. Sounded good to me. He even told me I could spend my breaks at his house instead of my mom's. I called my mom and told her that my dad had taken care of the issue and she had no remorse. She told me it was my own fault for not planning my finances better and for blowing away my money all summer. I just played it dumb and said she was right, but pointed out I had done what she told me to and complained to my dad. A month later, my mom called me up, really upset. My dad had spoken with the courts and there was going to be a hearing in their divorce case. My dad had proven that my mom had not been paying for mine nor my sister's tuition for college, and that was the very reason my dad was obligated to pay child support till I was done in college. Since I was living on campus, it didn't make sense to pay her child support when I was not living at home most of the year, and she wasn't giving me a penny. My dad told the judge he would gladly pay for me to finish college, but he was not going to pay my mom any more child support, nor pay the mortgage on the house. If my mom didn't want to take over the mortgage, they could sell the house and I could live with him over my breaks. My mom was freaking out over this and calling me selfish. I just reminded her that my tuition must cost a lot more than what she got in child support since she was never able to help me with costs of school. She just kept laying guilt trips on me about how I was selfish because she didn't get to go to college right after high school and how she never got to have 4 carefree years of college. I pointed out to her that she had not worked since my grandma passed about 3 years ago, and that I was working and going to school at that time while she got to live a carefree life. She pretty much ripped me a new one at that point. She tried to get back at my dad by not paying utilities on the house to make it seem like she needed the money. She then told me that the electric and water were now shut off, so if I wanted to come home for winter break, I needed to help her out. She had moved in with her boyfriend at his condo. I just told her that I would miss her, but that I would just go to my dad's for winter break. She was upset and cried about how selfish I was for not wanting to come home for Christmas. Side note, the Christmas before, my present was throwing out many of my personal belongings. Why? My mom was upset at me that I didn't want to come home one weekend to help her clean because to get home I had to take 2 buses, 2 trains, spend $20 one way, and wait for her to hopefully remember to pick me up at the train station, which was a whole 20-minute drive for her after I had traveled for 4 to 5 hours because I had finals, and I told her I would help clean for the holidays once I came home for winter break. Her response? She took all of my things, threw them in boxes, and threw them out in the front lawn. Most of my things were destroyed by being left out in the rain and gave away most of them. I told my mom that I would come home and visit her over the winter break once she got the utilities turned on. I told my dad what was going on, and he said he and my stepmom and my half-brother and sister were thrilled I was going to stay with them for winter break, and he can get me a job in his office as well for winter break. He also called my mom and reminded her that child support had not stopped, and they were going to list the house in a few months. So what was this nonsense about the utilities being shut off? She was upset, but magically came up with the money to turn them back on. That spring, my dad officially, by the court, took over my college tuition, and he even made sure I got full financial aid since he had picked up my W-2s for me. My mom lost her child support and was told by the judge that she better cooperate with the sale of the house and keep up with the utility bills, etc., so it would sell. Her boyfriend moved in with her till the house sold, and she moved to another time zone. The real kicker? It was cheaper for my dad to pay college costs than to pay her child support. Am I the jerk for telling my coworkers that no, not everyone in the office can afford to buy a house? My coworkers are usually pretty good to work with. The average salary for them is around $100K plus. I'm their administrative assistant and I make about $32K. Anyway, some of the things they say are kind of weird. For example, this one woman was shocked that I had never had any of my clothes tailored before. I think they're just really caught up in their own reality, you know? Like, in their world, everyone is beautiful and skinny and rich, with purebred dogs and perfect white teeth. I was helping organize, and someone announced they finally bought their first house. The conversation continued on to them kind of being rude and saying things like, "I don't get why people think no one can afford to buy a house. It's not that hard." And someone else was like,
"Yeah, I can't imagine being in my 30s and still renting. I'd feel like such a failure."
And they all agreed. I don't usually get upset about the things they're talking about, but I finally had it and was like, "I'm 38 and rent. I don't think I'm a failure." One of them was like, "Oh, well, we weren't talking about you. It's just that all these people always go on and on about how it's impossible to save for a down payment." I was just like, "Yeah, it is pretty hard." It was obvious the whole atmosphere in the room changed, so I was like, "Anyway," and got up and left to the main office to get back to work. Later on, one of the other women in the office came up and was like, "Hey, I'm sorry about earlier. I didn't mean to offend you. It got kind of awkward in there." I said, yeah, it was pretty awkward listening to them talk about how they'd feel like a failure if they were in my shoes. She said that's not what she meant. She actually meant that it felt like I was trying to call attention to the wage gap, like it was their fault, and that if I wanted to better myself, they could help me figure out how to apply to schools and work my way up just like they did. I said a kind of half-hearted, "Thanks." It's been weird in the office since then. I know money is one of those no-no topics, but it's not like it's a secret that I only make what I make. Am I the jerk? Forgot to add, we don't have HR, and this really isn't an HR thing. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or their coworkers? Please let us know. I'd tell those coworkers if it's not so hard to save up for a down payment, how about they pay for mine? Sir, you're talking to the manager of this department. It was the year 2014. I had gotten my dog trainer's license 2 years ago and soon found a job in a small but pretty popular dog training school. It was just a side job, but I loved it. Since I had collected a lot of experience with dogs even before I got my license, I got assigned the department for complicated dogs. This dog school was basically the concept that dog owners called in with their dog, described what exactly they were looking for, playgroup, obedience training, help with a problematic dog, and we assigned them to one of the different types of departments. Obviously, as the stereotype shows it, I had to put up with a lot of dangerous dogs like pit bulls, American Staffordshire Terriers, and others, just because their owners thought it would be cool to train their dog to guard their property and to have a smart, big dog. Obviously, most of them realized later they couldn't handle the dog and sought for help. Come the day. I was in the middle of a training. These specific dogs required their owners were away so I could work on the problems first without being disturbed, and had several dangerous dogs running around me because it was playtime. I don't remember their breeds exactly. I think it was 2 bloodhounds, a Staffordshire Terrier, and some bull terriers or pit bulls. The peaceful atmosphere gets disturbed by someone yelling something over the fence around the small field. One dog starts barking and gets completely furious, trying to storm to the fence, and sets the other dogs into angry mode too. I somehow manage to collect them and leash them to some extra posts so they can't do anything stupid. Already upset, because at the fence there's a sign, "If in use, don't disturb." And because whoever this was just put my own health at serious risk. I walk over to the fence and there's a guy standing and looking incredibly mad. The conversation went about like this. We've got the guy and we've got me. Me. "Hello, sir. How can I help you?" Guy.
"What are you doing? These are dangerous dogs. I will call the police."
Note, I'm a pretty small girl and look younger than I am. Maybe that's what set him off. Me. "Sir, what are you talking about?"
"They are dangerous dogs. You need to get out of there. You're not allowed in here.
Me. Sir, I work here.
Stop lying. You're too young and weak to work here.
Tries to open the gate. Thank God it was locked, exactly because of this. Me. Sir, I really do work here. Please don't damage the gates. They are locked for a good reason.
Liar. How did you even get in there?
Me. Desperately waves keys in front of his face.
You surely stole the keys. I will call the police.
Me. Exhausted and worried because the pit bulls behind me are starting to make very angry noises. Fine, do it. But maybe go to the office behind you first if you got any complaints. He went to the office, and I finally could get back to the dogs, who at this point were completely losing it, and I had to be very careful. Sometime later, the guy comes back with one of my assistants, but in another group. He points at me and starts yelling something, to which I just sigh and put the dogs away. As I walk over, my assistant recognizes me, sighs, and turns to the guy, explaining that I'm basically his boss. Guy stares at me and starts saying how that's not possible because I'm weak and can't handle these big, dangerous dogs, and how he's going to report to the police, and finally storms off. The result of this encounter was putting up another sign at the entrance of the property to direct any issues with the trainers to the office, and me having lost the training progress of 2 days. Great. I don't work there anymore, but I thought of maybe sharing this story. Just don't assume because someone doesn't look like they fit the job, it means they don't work there. Also, if they've got the keys. Speaking of dogs, do you have a dog? And if so, what kind? Please let us know. Mr. Reddit and I are thinking about getting one soon. What kind should we get? It's sad when kids have to explain the law to their parents. So this happened yesterday. I was just too tired when I got home to post it. I was working the customer service counter at work and had this woman, total non-Karen type, friendly, joking with me, and 3 teenagers, Teen 1, T2, and T3 come up. She wanted to buy some cigarettes, no problem. So she looks at her phone and reads it out. Again, not that uncommon. Canada recently changed the packaging requirements for every brand, so they all look identical now, so you need to know the exact name. After years and years of just having to worry about the color and brand, it's taken some getting used to. Even a year and a half later. It's a reflex. So, some people, especially people that only smoke occasionally, have the name of their preferred cigarette saved in their phones. Anyway, she lists off the brand, size, etc., all the info I need, and as I'm heading to the correct drawer, I hear the words that make me stop dead. I don't know. I don't smoke. Then this exchange ensues where she transformed into Karen before my very eyes. Me. I'm sorry. I can't sell them to you then. I would need to ID the person they are for. Karen. Are you serious? They're for my girlfriend. She's having a rough day. I said I would pick up some smokes for her. Me. I'm sorry, but once I ask for ID, I need to see it. And once I know they are not for the purchaser, I need to see the ID for the one they're for. Karen. Even if I go to another store? Me. I have no control over other stores. I just cannot legally sell them to you now that I know they're not for you. This is ridiculous. She's 36 years old. T1. Mom, it's the law. She can't sell them to you because she has no proof that they're not for someone under 19. For all she knows, you could be buying them for one of us. Karen, still complaining. Fine, we'll go somewhere else. It's still stupid. I couldn't hear all of what was being said after, but before they were out of earshot, he was still trying to explain that it was the law and I was only doing my job. Not 5 minutes later, a gentleman came in asking for the exact same ones. He was paying cash. I have zero doubts that he was her husband, but I can't prove that. He didn't say that they were for anyone else. He was polite, paid, and went on his way. Just for clarification, there are some brands that we sell a lot of, some that we hardly sell at all, and some that land somewhere in the middle. This was one of the middle brands, common enough that they could have plausibly been for the gentleman that bought them, but uncommon enough that I would have bet money that that was Karen's husband. Am I the jerk for no longer refilling and moving items my boyfriend leaves everywhere? I've come to realize that my boyfriend rarely moves items back to their original homes. Yes, I've talked to him about this and we haven't resolved anything, hence the post here. So my boyfriend will not put anything back to where it should be. This includes kitchen utensils. I'm not OCD, I just think that cutting knives should go near the cutting board, toilet paper, Q-tips, and most recently, the cat food feeding scoop. Specifically, he feeds the cats in the morning and leaves the scoop by whoever he feeds last. They're all fed in separate rooms. We have a fast eater. I feed the cats at night. We have to wander around until I find it, and then I put it back with the cat food, which is where he goes in the morning. I started replacing it to exactly where he leaves it now, and he's getting annoyed it's not with the food in the morning. Toilet paper. He will never replace it, so I started bringing my own roll into the bathroom, and if the bathroom roll is empty, I don't replace it. This goes for the Q-tips as well. He won't replace them in the bathroom. I've not replaced them in a month, and it seems like he's just stopped using them. Finally, when we go grocery shopping, he just shoves all the bags into the fridge/freezer/pantry for me to empty later. I've stopped emptying the bags and organizing the fridge and just remove my item from a bag and leave it as it was. This probably upsets him the most, since last time he put a pack of chicken in the pantry that I didn't notice. I really didn't notice it though. That's what he said to me. I assumed he at least checked the bags to be going in their general locations. Anyway, we've been fighting about this, and today he got upset the cat food scoop was not with the food and in the kitchen where he left it. Am I the jerk for trying to make a point that I can't constantly be fixing everything? Edit. Oh my goodness, I can't believe all these comments and awards. Thank you guys. I probably won't respond to you, but I'm reading all the comments now. I can clearly see that we have some stuff to work on, and I see comments on my old posts, and I will address it accordingly. I honestly think I'm pretty lax about this because my mom treated me very similarly, and I just got used to doing everything myself. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her boyfriend? Please let us know. Why not have a cat scoop in both rooms? As for everything else, you might want to look for a training school to send him to. Entitled mother and kid try to steal my cat from my backyard. No joke. This literally happened, and my cats are now locked inside on mobile. To make a long story short, my cats were lead trained to stay in the backyard, so I can let them outside when they're energized. I check on them every 5 minutes, and they have stacked outdoor furniture they love to hide in. One cat is very skittish around strangers, and she'll hide, while the other will only bolt if he's wary or energized. Both cats have a "I'm tolerating you" relationship, so when I looked to check on them, I was startled to see them both in a corner together. Then I saw the kid and her mother cornering them. I was pretty upset and rushed out and started yelling at them, scaring the mom and her kid pretty badly. Of course, when my cat saw the open door, they rushed to it and the mom tried to grab them. The female cat lashed out and clawed her hand good, making the entitled mom yell and recoil, letting my cats escape inside. The entitled kid started crying because the pretty kitties got away, and she wanted a kitty cat now. Entitled mom yelled at me that she was going to report me for assault, while I yelled from my back door that I was already on the phone with 911, reporting her for trespassing and attempted cat theft. She screamed at me in rage before grabbing her wailing kid and storming out of my yard. I had actually dialed 911, and the dispatcher heard the exchange and assured me that if the entitled mom did try to report me, it wouldn't work because she was in the wrong. About 10 minutes later, cops pulled up and I gave my statement, descriptions, and pointed which direction entitled mom and entitled kid had fled. The cops wrote it all down before one told me that I wasn't the first to call from this area. Apparently, the entitled mom had been attempting to lure out other pets her kid wanted. The cops were just trying to figure out who she was. No one, including me, recognized her or her kid, and she was getting more brazen. My yard was actually the first they had trespassed into. My cats are now being locked indoors for the foreseeable future, and I've warned a few of my neighbors who I know have pets about this in case they didn't know. This entire situation is honestly just horrible, as there have already been incidents involving getting pets, but stealing one from their loving family is a low all on its own. So, it's the school's fault your 9-year-old failed the 3rd grade? Okay then. Here is a tale of 2 boys, my 6-year-old son versus my 9-year-old nephew. Normally, I hate it when adults compare one kid to another, especially when it concerns someone else's kid versus theirs. But given the circumstances of this story, and frankly my mother-in-law favoring my nephew over my son, which she'll never admit but does this all the time, I feel like making an exception to one of my scruples. Anyways, both my son and my nephew are in the same school district, but go to different elementary schools. Due to lockdown, the district gave parents one of 2 choices for the fall of 2020, full-time virtual or temporary virtual. Full-time virtual involved staying at home the whole year, meeting the teacher on a half-hour Zoom call, and then completes various lessons and assignments weekly at the family's convenience. Temporary virtual was a set of Zoom calls to simulate being at school without being in person, which was temporary until the superintendent approved in-person learning again. In-person learning has been back since mid-January of 2021, by the way, but more on that later. My 6-year-old was in temporary virtual because my wife and I really wanted him to be back in person schooling as soon as the school district allowed it. In the meantime, my son was on Zoom lessons with the online class, while my wife acted as a teacher's assistant, making sure that my son was doing the schoolwork he was supposed to do, pay attention, and learn what he was able to on Zoom. I helped with a few things after I was done with work and gave her the break she deserved. I definitely am glad my wife played this role so well. Our son did a great job with the online learning, but he is very happy to be back into in-person learning. My nephew is a different story. My brother-in-law's baby mama signed up my nephew for full-time virtual learning. I think she thought it would be easier because of the appeal of doing the lessons at any time of the day. I think that jerk just wanted to sleep in, frankly, because the last 2 years prior she had him miss 70 days of school each year, and part of the time that was why. To be fair, neither one of them really give a crap about the concept of a good education. My brother-in-law did not even lift a finger concerning his own son's education and would rather play Street Fighter online or hang out at his friend's house, while my nephew's mother only did certain things when she felt like it or when the school compelled her. Right before Christmas break, my wife and I heard from my mother-in-law that our nephew was literally kicked out of full-time virtual and would be put on the temporary virtual schooling program until in-person would be in effect, because he wasn't doing any of the schoolwork. I'm pretty sure my nephew will be repeating the 3rd grade because of that. My mother-in-law and my nephew's mom, of course, blame the school district for failing him. Yep, totally the school's fault your kid didn't do any of the schoolwork. Finders keepers doesn't work for horses, no matter how much you love them. So this was several years ago, but another story made me think about it. I used to show my horses at a local fairground sometimes. Nothing fancy, just some local open shows, mostly western and barrels/poles. I have a big bay gelding, Dio, who gets lots of compliments for how striking he looks. He's well known around the other regular show attendants. He's not registered or even purebred, kind of just a horse of unknown mix, vaguely quarter horse-ish heritage, so not particularly high dollar, just pretty. He also is the horse equivalent of a golden retriever, absolutely loves everybody, especially if they give him a little attention. While I was in the ring showing another one of my horses, Dio was standing at our trailer in the lot. I had a friend at a trailer nearby who was kind of keeping an eye on him for me, but she was working inside her trailer when, supposedly, Dio got loose. I came back a bit later as she was stepping out and Dio was nowhere to be found. We asked around and a couple of us spread out around the lot looking for him. No one had called out about a loose horse or seemed to have noticed him, until my friend and I heard a bit of a ruckus a few rows down. Someone struggling to load their horse. See, Dio loves people and he loves food, but he really hates getting into small trailers. First off, he's a big guy and really doesn't fit that well. And second off, he's always had some issues getting into trailers. We have a procedure and a big roomy trailer, so he loads okay for me. A few rows down from our trailer, a woman and her daughter are trying to load this suspiciously familiar big bay gelding into an itty-bitty 2-horse trailer next to another horse, and neither horse was having it. Just when we showed up, Dio yanked back and sort of half-reared up, pulling the rope away from the woman. Me, having some trouble loading that horse? Entitled Mom. Oh, he just gets like this, really wound up after having shows all day. You know barrel horses. Me. Well, I think it's probably more of a problem if he doesn't load well, especially into strangers' tiny trailers, since he doesn't run barrels. What? What stranger? My friend. That's her horse you're trying to steal. I think she'd know better. Entitled Mom. What? No, he's ours. We found him. Me. You found him? At a trailer? No, he was just running around loose, so we caught him. Me. And how does that make him yours? Entitled Mom, getting huffy. Well, no one was looking for him, so you obviously don't care about him. My daughter loves him and wanted a horse to run barrels on. Me. Well, your daughter's going to be sorely disappointed because I raised him and care quite a lot about him. And also, he doesn't run barrels. He's terrified of them. Entitled Daughter. I don't care. Jack is the horse I've always wanted. Mom, we have to get him. Well, fine. How much do you want for him? Is $200 enough? Me. He's not for sale, and he's not named Jack. I'm going to take him back to my trailer now. Bye. Another one of my friends had caught him by now and was handing his rope over to me. I'm 100% ready to just walk away from this headache. Entitled Daughter. No, Mom, you can't let her take Jack away.
No, you're not. Give that horse back to my daughter.
Me, nope. There was some more arguing while I walked away. My friend got really fired up and started yelling. Maybe a half an hour later, the lady came storming up to my trailer with some poor deputy in tow.
That's him. That's my daughter's horse. She's stealing my daughter's horse.
I'll let you imagine the details of that encounter, but supposedly, I had stolen this horse right from their trailer. I showed the cop a handful of pictures of us together on my phone, including one I had from when he was just a foal, and a few friends/acquaintances that were nearby and knew me attested that, yeah, Dio was in fact my horse. We also relayed the whole debacle to the officer, and my friend kept insisting we should press charges. Maybe I should have, but I just wanted to load up my horses and go home by then. We also mentioned the other horse, kind of worried it might have been found too, and he said he would check on it. The deputy then went off and talked to the other woman and her daughter. It didn't look like a fun conversation for him. After a bit, he came back and assured us that the other horse seemed to be theirs. She had pictures. He took down some of my info, and if we wanted to leave, we could. And so we did. Dio walked right into our trailer with minimal fuss. A friend of mine that stuck around longer told me later that she had seen the girl outright sobbing and yelling at her mom. Have you ever ridden a horse? And if not, would you like to? Please let us know.
You look like a horse, Reddit boy.
School VP says you can take us to court, and my father did. This incident took place in India in the early 90s. The school where my sister and I had studied was in my hometown. We knew almost all the teachers since they were practically our neighbors. When it came to the time I graduated from school, the principal had retired and the vice principal took over as the principal. The vice principal was also from the same town and for some unknown reason had some sort of grudge against my father. In local gatherings, etc., he would always try to belittle my father at all chances he could get. My father would normally let it pass since he knows that getting into silly arguments with such a bully is totally unproductive. When my sister and I had joined the school, my father was required to pay a refundable deposit of $5,000 per kid, which would be returned back at the time each kid graduated from the school. 10,000 rupees in the 90s was a large amount and is equivalent to 95,000 rupees of the present time. I graduated in 1989. When my father inquired about the refund, the VP had informed him that since my sister would be graduating in 1 year's time, both the deposits would be returned together. So when my sister graduated from school, my father requested the school to refund both the deposits. There was no response, even after 2 weeks, and my father personally went to the school to demand the refund. The VP, being the egotistical bully, started arguing with my father, stating that the school can't refund the deposits. The argument became very heated, and he outright refused point blank and said,
"We are not returning the deposits. Do what you can. You can take us to court if you want."
My father went silent, got up, and left the school. Came home, sat down with Mom, went through all the school-related documents she had kept. My mother had a very meticulous documentation system. She used to save every receipt, bill, stub, etc. He found the receipts for the deposits. He took them to his lawyer friend. My dad informed his friends, whose kids were in the same school, about the issue. The lawyer filed the case and took the school to court. The school couldn't provide any reason for withholding the deposits and fighting with the parents. My dad won. The school was instructed to pay back the deposits with interest and the court dues. My father's friends who were in the PTA took up the issue in the subsequent PTA meeting and got the school's trustee board to ensure that such issues won't be dealt with in the same manner and all deposits will be refunded in time, and strictly warned the VP not to bring any personal grudges into school business. Other parents who were owed deposits but had forgotten about it started to claim them. Cost the school a lot to pay back the deposits. Supermarket Karen demands my bread, then lies to staff about me. Okay, so this just happened, and it may be the most cliched Karen encounter I've ever had. Obligatory apologies for any formatting issues. I'm posting this from my phone because I want to write it all out before I forget any details. My flatmate/BFF has sensory issues and thus strict preferences when it comes to food. I do our grocery shopping each week. He works full-time while I'm disabled and unable to work, so I do what I can to keep the workload fair, especially since he's also my carer, and also get him these same damper bread rolls with no seeds. They're the softest bread available, and it's not unusual for me to get the last one on the shelf of a Friday, which was what happened today. I should also add that my genetic disorder, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, means that my skin doesn't age normally. So while I'm turning 32 this year, I'm often mistaken for anywhere from 17 to 25 years old, depending on the situation and how I'm dressed. Not even half a minute after I'd put the rolls in my trolley, I heard a woman behind me doing that inhaling through her teeth sound, followed by an "ah." I turned around and was greeted by the sight of a super stereotypical Karen in every sense, except for her hair, which was past her shoulders, but still straight and blonde with badly done stripy highlights. She had the 2 sizes too small yoga pants and workout top with way too much gold jewelry. She was also wearing sunnies inside the supermarket. With that simpering, wincing expression on her orange face, she said, "I'm so sorry about this, love, but I'm going to have to ask you to give me that bread." I couldn't fight the instinct and immediately burst out laughing. The whole scenario was just too much for me. Karen, hand on hip. "What the heck's so funny?" Me. "Well, you must be joking, right?" "There's no need to be so rude. Give me that bread now, or I'll be having words with your parents." Me, bristling and being spoken down to yet again. "You're not having my bread, Karen. Leave me the heck alone." And I walked away. I heard huffing and stammering behind me, but just ignored it and carried on with my shopping. I thought that was it, but of course, Karen needed to try and put me in my place, as I'm sure she'd have said it. She showed up several aisles later with a member of staff. But here's the thing, I'm a disabled woman who shops for the same exact things on the same days every week, and I've had to ask staff for help on plenty of occasions. Many of the staff at that supermarket know me fairly well, so when Karen showed up with Janelle, fake name, pointing aggressively at "that little jerk right there," me, she was probably quite surprised when Janelle said, "Oh, hi OP, you're a bit later than usual today, aren't you? Everything okay?" Me, "Yeah, it's just been one of those days, you know?" Karen interjecting, "That's the thieving brat who stole that bread right out of my trolley and refused to give it back." Janelle, side-eyeing Karen, "Is that really what happened, OP?" Me, "Actually, I literally just got to the shelf first. Karen here demanded I give it to her, and I guess she didn't know how to handle being told no. I'm sorry you've had to waste your time like this." Karen, "She's lying. Where are your parents, you little jerk?" Me, "How about we just review the security footage and clear this up, so we can all get on with our days?" Janelle, "That won't be—" Karen to Janelle, cutting her off, "Excuse me? Are you calling me a liar? I have never been so offended in all my life. I will not have my character insulted by a checkout girl." Yup, she genuinely said that. Janelle with a frustrated sigh, "OP, please just carry on with your shopping. I've got this from here." Me, "Thanks, hun. Good luck." And I went to leave, knowing that hanging around would have only further inflamed the situation. Janelle to Karen, "I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Karen started mouthing off at that, but I don't remember exactly what she said. It included something about my parents and getting Janelle fired, but I was out of there fairly quickly. I didn't see Karen again after that, and I don't know whether she left on her own accord, but I didn't hear of any huge commotion, so I'm guessing she eventually did. Must remember to contact the store and give Janelle's boss good feedback about how brilliantly she handled it all. Here's hoping I don't encounter that Karen again, but if I do, I'll be sure to tell you guys about it. What an absolutely absurd creature. Thank you so much for all the awards. Speaking of bread, what's your favorite kind of bread of all time? Please let us know. French onion bread for the win. Am I the jerk for yelling at my husband to stop eating my food? I'll keep this pretty cut and dry. I have a lot of food allergies, gluten intolerance, IBS, lactose intolerance. I'm allergic to spinach and kale and other leafy greens in that family. I buy special food for myself as well as regular food for my husband who does not have any allergies or food intolerances. For some reason, my husband likes to eat my snacks as well as his own. Instead of going to get a new loaf of bread, he'll open my gluten-free bread and eat all of it. It's been an issue our whole relationship. He says it's because he wants to use all the food before we go grocery shopping again, so nothing goes to waste. Now, I'm 13 weeks pregnant, and the amount of things I can eat are even less. Pretty much the only things I can keep down are these very specific gluten-free crackers that are like $8 a box, and bananas. Yesterday, I came home from my doctor's appointment and found out that he ate my whole brand new box of crackers. I had just gone grocery shopping and we had plenty of food and snacks for him to eat. When I asked him why he decided to eat pretty much the only thing I can keep down, he said he just grabbed some crackers and he didn't see the big deal and that I was overreacting by being upset. He said he knows my pregnancy hormones are out of whack, but I needed to control myself. That made me angry, and I told him he needed to stop eating my food and making me feel bad for being upset, or he wouldn't have a wife anymore. He got really offended and hasn't spoken to me since, and I feel like I overreacted due to my pregnancy hormones. But I also feel like I am kind of valid in being frustrated by my husband who has no allergies eating all my specialty foods before I get any. Am I the jerk? He gets annoyed if I only buy things I can eat. He asks why he has to eat my diet when it's not him that has problems. My pregnancy was an accident. I guess my birth control failed or something else happened. It wasn't planned because we were working through issues and I didn't want to bring a baby into the world during lockdown. Please stop telling me I was stupid for having a baby with him. I'm simply asking for judgments on the situation. Do you have any food intolerances? If so, what are they? Please let us know. Anything with nuts and it's game over for me. My final post, maybe. I finally got to say it. For starters, I'm afraid this may be my last post here. Late last year, I got a job teaching literacy that I love for an organization that treats me like a human being. Anyway, this happened during my final 2 weeks after giving notice at the hotel. You know those fantasy conversations you have where you get in an argument and you have the perfect response? I finally got to use one. I live near an Air Force base, so it's not uncommon for us to get airmen checking in late, usually because they're too tanked up to drive past the base checkpoint. Typically they're nice, and I have nothing but respect for our servicemen in general, but a jerk is a jerk, whether in uniform or not. It's late at night and we're about full. All I have available are third-floor rooms. We're a small place and don't have elevators. An airman in uniform comes in reeking of booze and rejection and asks for a room. I tell him all I have is the third floor. I can tell he isn't listening, but he responds, "Whatever." So I check him in. A few minutes later, he comes back to the desk raising heck. He wants a first floor room, and I'm dang well going to give it to him. Having lived here for a while, I knew from his insignia that he was an E2, basically an airman just out of basic. Most likely, he was out celebrating and wore his uniform to the bar, hoping to impress a local lady or two. Unfortunately for him, most of the women here know how to read rank 2. Finally, it was time to use the response I'd been rehearsing since the first time I got chewed out by an airman for making him do stairs. I decide to play along. Me: "I'm sorry, sir. Just give me a moment to pull up your reservation." He smiles at me smugly. Me: "Okay, airman jerk, right?" He nods. Me: "And who's your first shirt?" U.S. Air Force lingo for first sergeant. Without thinking, he tells me. Then after a moment, he asks why. Me: "Well, I just wanted to know who to leave a message for to tell him that Airman Jerk doesn't like doing stairs and to make sure he doesn't make you do any while on base. What should I tell him when he asks why you chose to sleep here instead of in your rack?" The shade of white he turned looked green next to his pale blue shirt. Without a word, he turned sharply on his heel and I didn't hear from him for the rest of the night. And that may or may not be the last story I post here. If I ever do post again, it will be because some memory of my tenure as an NA bubbled to the surface and will be largely paraphrased. I'll still stick around to read everyone else's stories though. Edit: it was only an idle threat. I'd really have to be upset to do anyone dirty like that. Luckily, I knew enough about the Air Force that it was a convincing one. Give me your dog, because I have anxiety. I have a large field across from my house with a track around it. The high school uses it for football practice, but people in the neighborhood are allowed to use it as well. Usually it's empty. I have a yellow lab greyhound shepherd mix. I've had her since I was very young and I've grown up with her. She's a bit older now, but very healthy and still plays like a puppy. She's very sweet. So the weather outside was nice and I decided to take my dog for a walk. I put her harness on and take her across the street. I always listened to music on my walks and didn't hear the entitled woman when she was calling at me. Eventually, I feel a slap to my shoulder, so I take my headphones off and I look at her. Me: "Yes?" "That's a nice dog. Is she good for emotional support?" Me: Yeah." "Where'd you get her?" "Oh, my grandmother is a dispatcher, and a few years ago, a box of puppies was found at the side of the road. My grandma brought her home. All the puppies have been adopted and have grown up." "Well, can I buy yours then?" "Excuse me?" "I'll pay you $20. Me: "No, she's mine, and she's not up for sale or adoption." "But I have anxiety. I need a service dog, and they're so expensive. I'm assuming this isn't true. I'm not sure how to get a service dog. I'm just assuming she was lying for pity or something. I already said no. She's mine, and I'm not giving her up. Entitled lady, trying to snatch the lease away from me. I need her. Luckily, my neighbor was coming out for a walk. I've talked to her a lot, and she's very kind, and she knows what my dog looks like because sometimes we end up going for walks around the same time. Neighbor, hey OP, is there an issue? Entitled lady, oh thank goodness. This brat is trying to steal my dog. I'm not sure how entitled lady thought this was going to work when neighbor clearly knew me. But anyway, neighbor, that's not your dog. That's OP's dog. I've seen OP with her for years. The entitled lady gets all flustered and leaves. I waited a bit before going home because I didn't want entitled lady seeing where I lived, seeing as my house was right across the street from the track. Going above and beyond when a good deed for a guest came back to kick me in the face. I worked at the front desk of a 4-star hotel that kept one room for staff, room 101. It was used by employees for the bathroom, lunch, or a place to be so we weren't in the way of guests when on a break. The room was bare bones. Maintenance had taken things from it to replace broken items in other rooms. This room lacked a TV, lamps, and a dresser. The only lighting was from the bathroom. It was rarely used for guests, only in emergencies. One night around 11 p.m., a woman I'll call Karen came in. I explained that we were sold out, and she broke down sobbing. She said she had just left her horrible husband and needed a place for the night as she was leaving in the AM to fly to her sister's. She was crying so hard, I felt bad. I decided to rent out room 101 to her. I went down to housekeeping, got her towels, some sheets and pillows, and even cut her rate, but I explained to her the rate was low because the room had no amenities. She thanked me profusely, and when she was gone, I felt good for helping her. A bit later, Karen asks if we can get her a TV. I say no and explain that we don't have a spare TV to give her. She then comes back asking if we can get her a lamp. I gave her the same speech, reminding her how I super reduced her rate due to the room missing things. She gets a little upset and says she can't see well enough to read. I didn't have anything going on, so I went to the maintenance room to look for a lamp, but came up empty. When I returned without one, she wasn't happy, but she said nothing. A few days later, the manager called me into her office. She had gotten a complaint about me, and guess what? It was that woman. She had written an email saying I insisted on giving her a low-level room that was missing all basic necessities. She said she wasn't told there was no lamp or TV, and that when she questioned me about it, I became rude and abrasive. She also said we had rooms available, but I refused to have housekeeping clean them. The guest said she demanded the low rate, but I gave in because I knew she was right. I denied everything, explained what really happened, and honestly, felt really bad. I bent over backwards for that woman, and she sent a letter filled with lies about me just to get $75 back. The only thing I had to prove my side of the story was the rate when I checked her in. Instead of charging her the regular rate and then lowering it once she confronted me, you could see she started with a discounted rate. It turned out to be the only thing that helped me keep my job. This manager had a customer is always right mentality and believed guests over employees every time. After that, I never went above and beyond again for a guest. No matter how pathetic they were, I had to worry it would come back to bite me. People suck. They make it hard to do nice things. Edit to add. This was nearly 20 years ago, before decent cameras were used in this hotel. If you're going to tell different stories to con staff members, make sure they're actually different people. I used to work in a little thrift store, basically half of a converted house. The other half housed the offices for the charity the store benefited. Mostly, we had very low prices, especially for clothing. We were lower than any of the other thrift stores in town. This was simply because we got so much clothing donated and had so little space to put it that it was more profitable to sell inexpensively as quickly as possible, and we set one price for each type of clothing. For example, all t-shirts were $1, so we didn't have to spend money or time tagging them. Which brings us to the lady with the $2 skirt. I was putting out clothes on the racks, aiming for our usual level of minimally disorganized, when this lady held up a long skirt to show me. I said something about it being very nice, and she said, "Well, I was just thinking about getting it because I have a pillow I want to recover, and if I went to a fabric store, this much fabric of this quality would probably cost me $18. I said something about that being quite clever and how lucky it was she found a skirt that she liked that had enough fabric, but I didn't think much of it and continued putting out the rest of the clothes I had. About 10 minutes later, when I'm going to the back to get some more clothes to put out, the lady who was sitting at the front desk taking money asked me if I would watch the desk for a couple minutes while she went to the bathroom. So I happened to be sitting there when the lady with the skirt walks up and sets it down. As I'm taking the hanger off, she says, "So, I was wondering if there's any flexibility on the price, because I'm just going to use the fabric, and it seems like a lot to just use some of the fabric." At first, I thought she was joking. Then I realized she really didn't recognize me as the person she had just spoken to and was quite serious. I just laughed and said, "Really? You just told me that this was at least $18 worth of fabric and what a great buy it was." There was a moment of stunned silence as she actually looked at me and realized that I was the same person. Then a rather defeated, "Oh." Death thinks it quite annoying when customers don't recognize that we may be mere servants to our feline overlords, but we still are people. Am I the jerk for hanging a photo of my family, including my boyfriend, in my apartment? My boyfriend, 32 male, recently moved into my 27 female apartment. We've been dating for a while, a little more than a year, and decided that it was time to make things serious. I have a daughter, 6, who also lives with me and visits her father every other weekend. I work in a quite demanding job, and my daughter used to either stay with my parents or be at a daycare while I worked. However, with the current state of the world, my boyfriend has been able to keep an eye on her mostly. I'm still in the house, but he's been doing stuff when I'm not able to, like checking what she's doing for school and making her lunch. She's also taken an interest in music, and my boyfriend used to be in a band his teenage years, and she's fascinated by that, and they spend a lot of time playing the guitar together. So they've gotten pretty close, and they are quite fond of each other. As my boyfriend has moved in, we've taken to redecorating a bit to make it our space, and I put a frame of the 3 of us, me, daughter, and boyfriend, in the living room. It's a sweet photo of a happy day that we are all fond of. There are other photos around the house with my boyfriend, and there's a few of my boyfriend teaching my daughter the guitar, stuff like that. I don't have any photos of my ex around the apartment, but in my daughter's room, we've hung photos of her and her dad. They were always there. My ex and I have a complicated history, but we are cordial now. The other day, when my ex came to pick up our daughter for the weekend, he noticed the changes in the pictures. I didn't really notice until later, but he left kind of mad. He then called me around midnight and ranted to me about how disrespectful it is to have a family-style photo with him not included in any of them, and how it's going to negatively affect our daughter's relationship with him, and that I'm purposely trying to alienate our daughter from him. Apparently, our daughter also has started talking about my boyfriend a lot in front of her father, and that rubbed him the wrong way. He wants me to remove the photos or add a photo with the 3 of us, him, me, and our kid. Both requests which I've refused. Am I the jerk? Well, who do you agree with? OP or her ex? Please let us know. Update. My sister thinks $55 covers 2 months of babysitting. I spoke first to brother-in-law, who had no idea that she wasn't paying me, so he was the one to pay me back for the weeks I had already done. He wasn't very happy with my sister. I didn't watch them for this last week. I did talk to my sister first off about how disrespectful that was to make a deal and then go back on that deal, especially considering how ill-behaved her kids are. My sister told me that she didn't think it was a big deal because I was getting unemployment, and she assumed that because some people were getting unemployment and an additional $600 a week, that it didn't make any sense to pay extra to people on unemployment and not those working. So I was making bank either way. She assumed wrong. I was not getting $600 extra a week. I wasn't on unemployment, but it was a part of what happened with my former employer before I went to work for myself, that they're paying for my unemployment for their many labor law violations. My unemployment through them is almost up anyways. Either way, it was odd for her to assume I was making $900 a week off unemployment without asking me if I was. She and her brother-in-law had to switch around their shifts to watch their kids this week since I wouldn't show up. Brother-in-law said he'd pay me directly if she wasn't going to, and that's when it became a 3-way conversation. I let them know that their kids' behavior is really unacceptable, even for behaviorally challenged kids, which if they were, they'd be forced to have a child care provider licensed for dealing with it. That's not the case with their kids. They just let them get away with too much. Ironically, last week I saw a hot binge episode with a mother who had a kid who apparently told the babysitter to put him in his room, put up the gate if she were to not be in the room with him for any reason so he couldn't get out, and this kid was 10, and it got me thinking of my nephews. So I told them they need to install more security measures against the kids. A high-raised lock that the monkey can't reach, so he can't be running out the door. Removing anything that can be used as a weapon. Possibly a gate to lock one up in the room if they're misbehaving where there's nothing in there for them to break. I'm not watching them this week either, but I told them I might reconsider if something can be done to make watching them not like being a security guard at a prison. My sister didn't like my suggesting that they need to change their parenting, but my brother-in-law actually agreed. They had their argument, and he said this is why they can't get a babysitter or daycare for them anymore. They're out of control. Definitely knew that. And that they just keep coddling them through it. Definitely knew my sister was doing that. So there's a possibility I might watch them next week, if they have some sort of way to mitigate their behaviors that could actually work. But that's not a yes yet. They would need these ways to start disciplining their kids either way, or they'll just be releasing awful teens into the world. What would you do if you were in this situation? Would you continue babysitting these kids even though they're so difficult to deal with? Deterred a shoplifter. She then brought her mom in with her for an apology. I work in a retailer that is in most of Europe. We have no guards or security, so it's our job to keep track of shoplifters. This day I had a late start, so after cleaning the shop floor of loose cardboard, I started working on the stock of meat. While working, I noticed a guy taking off his backpack and talking to his sister. His sister came in with an old lady buggy, very popular here, and put her shopping in there, mostly bagged veggies and fruit. I finished the putting out of the meat, put all the empty meat trays on a pallet, and started to head back to the warehouse. Just as I started to turn the corner, I saw the guy had picked up a piece of pork fillet and was walking to his sister, backpack still in his hand too. He was also sort of watching me too. Instantly, I took note of this as I've seen this trick dozens of times. I left the pallet with empty trays and made a quick lap around the aisle. I wanted to see if the meat had disappeared. After turning the corner, I saw the couple. The backpack was again on the guy's back, and her buggy did not have the meat in it. Great, I thought. I called out on the radio to all the staff that there might be a potential shoplifting couple and gave a brief description of what they looked like. I followed them around to see if they would try to take anything else, but they didn't. They just walked to the tills to start unloading what they were going to buy. I called out to the cashier and asked to see if they had unloaded the pork fillet on the belt. I got a quick reply saying there wasn't one there, so I quickly positioned myself at the exit and was waiting for them. They almost instantly clocked me, and the dude was staring at me. They gave each other a quick glance, said something, and the guy quickly started walking back to the shop floor. I quickly walked to the aisle to see what he was doing. The guy took off his bag, unzipped it, and threw the meat to the back of the shelf and started looping around the store. While this was happening, the girl's shopping was already scanned and she was paying. I turned to her and told her bluntly, after paying, you and your friend are not welcome back here again. Her eyes popped out. She threw the coins that she was counting and started yelling. I did nothing wrong. I calmly explained that her friend tried to shoplift. While this was happening, the guy came back and heard my accusations and was outraged. He started yelling and threatening me. After seeing my name badge, he said,
Oh, OP, you should watch your back. You will get hurt.
They both were hurling insults at me and my manager. At the end, the girl paid for her shopping. I checked the bag, even though I knew he's not that dumb to leave anything in there, and they left, while hurling insults and saying they will call the cops. A couple of hours pass, and I'm on till covering my colleague's break. All staff, including managers, are on till as there's a big rush going on. I hear on the radio from the person on break that there's a situation in the canteen and a manager needs to come. So my manager closes his till and goes there. A minute passes and I'm being called in also. So I close my till and go to the canteen. What do I see? Another one of my colleagues, the woman from earlier, and my manager. Turns out the shoplifting couple were son and daughter of one of my colleagues. Straight away, I can see that this is gonna be good. From this moment, I'll need to put in some characters. We've got me. We've got A, the woman from earlier. We've got B, the mom, my colleague. We've got the manager. I sit down, and instantly A starts yelling at me. I did not shoplift. Even if my brother did, you had no right to come up to me. And if you didn't know, I'm pregnant. Even though she did not look pregnant at all, even with a low-cut shirt. B, stop yelling. Let OP explain what happened. Me, as I said at the tills, You are an accomplice to the deed, and while I got cut off.
How dare you call me an accomplice? He put the meat back.
Me. After you both saw me standing at the exit looking at you. B.
So, you admit that they were not shoplifting, so you have no right to ban my son and daughter.
Manager. This is a deterred attempt to shoplift at any point. Both you and your brother were not just yelling and causing a scene, but also threatened my colleague with harm. B.
Yes, for this we are very sorry. There was no reason for those threats.
Even though the daughter never said sorry for any of this. A.
But he
Points at me.
had no right to come up to me and accuse me of any of this, and I want an apology.
Me. Haha. I genuinely laughed. No, that is not happening. You both knew what you were trying to do. Not to mention, got cut off again.
Oh, big man, aren't you?
At this point, the mom started playing devil's advocate and saying that they were not shoplifting if they were not walking out with the stolen bits, and was almost demanding that I'd apologize. Again, I started to explain what I saw, and again was cut off by A. Me. So, I see we are going in circles. My suggestion is to watch the security footage, as a picture will say 1,000 words more than me. I asked the manager if I could go back to work. Manager. Yeah, I think we're done here. I'll let the store manager know what happened, what we talked about, and he will be the determining factor if you guys are banned or not. So I left the canteen, and all the staff were already waiting for me to tell them the story of what happened in there, which of course I did. It was far too funny. So that's about it. Thank you for reading. Have you ever seen someone stealing in a store? If so, did you tell anyone? Please let us know.
Desperate times call for desperate measures. A Karen's got to eat.
Entitled neighbor steals dogs, then returns them after they destroy his house. I read a few stories on here, and they reminded me of an incident that occurred years ago dealing with 2 dogs my older sister acquired from a friend. The roster in the story. We've got my sister. She's much older than me, kind of a pain in the butt. We've got me as myself, younger sister. We've got animal control officer. The lady was a power-tripping jerk. We've got entitled neighbor. We've got troll face, entitled neighbor's wife. She looked like an angry troll. And we've got my dad as himself. Think Christopher Walken, old school Queens, New York accent. At the time, I was working 2 jobs, and I was staying with my sister. It is my sister's place, so she can do as she pleases when it comes to having animals. She had taken in a female Cocker Spaniel named Mercy and her puppy that was about 5 months old. She got the dogs from her friend with the agreement if the dogs did not work out, she would take them back. My sister had just acquired the dogs, and immediately the dogs were using the inside of the house as a toilet. It was weird. All the meals were timed, and they were fed twice a day at specific times with specific amounts for individual weight/age. You could take them out and walk for 2 hours, and I kid you not, the second they were brought back inside, they would go to the bathroom. My sister finally decided to put the dogs on the enclosed porch to better control bathroom training. The porch was huge, and she had a large doghouse for them to stay in for shelter. It was nice because if they did have an accident, it was easy to clean. This was in the middle of spring, and she would leave them out there during the day. It did not get cold where we live, and she was hoping to break them out of the habit of going to the bathroom all over the house. When my sister got off work, the dogs were brought inside and monitored. Our dad would come by and help too, since he had nothing better to do. Plus, my sister would hook him up with his favorite coffee and cake. The routine was, the dogs would eat in the morning and taken for a good 30-minute walk, then put on the porch for 5 hours. My sister would come home for lunch and repeat the process, hoping to break the bad habit. Food and water were restricted to get them to toilet outside. Entitled neighbor across the street would stare and shake his head like this was the most horrible thing he had ever seen. A week later, I was on my way to work when I see an animal control vehicle blocking me in. I see the door open and this short, overweight woman with Coke bottle glasses approaches the porch. I come out. Me. Can I help you? Animal control. Yes, I just received a complaint about what's going on with your dog over here. Me. Excuse me? I don't know what you're talking about. Officer. Really? Then why are these 2 dogs being left on your porch? Animal control lady decides to go inside the porch without permission and sees Mercy and her puppy chilling out in the doghouse chewing on toys. They were not chained and free to move around the enclosed porch. Officer.
Look at this. This is cruel. Dogs that are kept outside require access to food and water at all times.
Me. Really? These animals have been fed and watered. Second, both dogs are not chained. Third, I believe you are referring to livestock. And last, if that is the law, then I need you to show me where we are required to do so.
Officer, I could take these animals right now.
Me. Really? These animals are in the middle of potty training, which is why they're kept on this porch during the day for a few hours and then brought in at night. Second, you are trespassing. You need to leave now.
Before she could say anything, my dad pulls up and he lived down the street from us. My dad gets out and rips the officer a new one. The best part, imagine Christopher Walken with a huge biker beard, ticked off. Yes, that is who my dad sounds like, and chased officer back into her vehicle with his words. My dad,
I've had it with you. Get the heck out of here, now. I'm gonna be talking to your boss. You got a lot of nerve.
I finally got to work late, and my dad took care of informing my sister of what happened. Officer's supervisor knew my dad and apologized for the incident that happened. He complained, and yes, what we were doing is 100% legal and allowed. There was no harm done to the dogs in any way, and my sister was trying to get them trained. Animal control would not be bothering us in the future. The dogs were left, and apparently, entitled neighbor was horrified that animal control didn't do anything. It was kind of obvious with the nasty scowling stares from him and his wife. 2 days passed, and my sister came home to find the dogs were gone. Someone took them, and she was extremely upset. She was sure that entitled neighbor had taken them, but could not prove it. About 5 days go by, and magically, the dogs are sitting there on the porch like they had never left. We see entitled neighbor and Trollface arguing with a carpet cleaning company about the dog poop inside of their house. It sounded like the two did not bother to clean it up and expected the cleaner to do it, who refused. I remember the cleaner telling them that they needed to remove it, and he would be more than happy to clean the carpets. My dad and I could not stop laughing because we found out that the dogs destroyed the carpets in entitled neighbor's house. The two idiots must have given them access to food and water 24/7, and what goes in must come out. The dogs did not seem to have an off switch when it came to water and food. You had to limit them or they would throw up and go to the bathroom all over the place. They had all the shots, no parasites, and we think they were not right due to how they were bred. My sister eventually gave up and returned the dogs to her friend. It seemed that no matter what we did to try and train them to go outside, nothing worked. Oh, and my sister had a professional carpet shampoo machine, so the carpets were kept very clean. The last straw was Mercy refusing to walk on a lead, and she bit my sister. We think the entitled neighbor must have done something, but the dogs were not in the right head. Mercy also became aggressive with her puppy, and we had to separate them. The friend ended up taking them back, and they were kept on a farm, which worked better for the dogs. Here is where it gets good. Entitled neighbor and Trollface show up at my sister's door, demanding my sister pays for the damages done to her carpet. First, they call animal control about the dogs, then decide to steal the dogs, and now they want my sister to pay for the damage done. Nope, not happening, and my dad tells them to buzz off. Trollface,
You're gonna pay for this. Look at what your dogs did.
she shows us pictures of what happened to their house. It was really nasty. My dad,
What the heck is wrong with you? You two are thieves. You better get, now.
he takes the garden hose and sprays the two of them off the property while yelling at them.
Yeah, you like that, thief?
They ran back to their house and stayed away. For the next year, entitled neighbor and his troll-faced wife shot dirty looks to us, but for the most part left us alone after that until the kids put in a basketball hoop. That is another story for another day. Speaking of dogs, what kind of dog do you have? Please let us know.
We're thinking about getting a Mastiff.
Am I the jerk for refusing to go on a family holiday with my boyfriend's family because I can't stand his 7-year-old nephew? So, context first. 2 years ago, I went on holiday to Spain with my boyfriend and his sister, her husband, 3 nieces, and his nephew, then 5, sister-in-law and brother-in-law for this. We rented a shared house. They wanted to go to petting zoos, etc., whereas me and my boyfriend wanted to lie by the pool and drink. So we agreed every other day we would do things together, and then the other days we would spend time apart, just me and boyfriend. Same in the evenings, some nights together, some apart. I should add, they asked to come with us because they don't earn a lot of money, and it would be cheaper for them to share the cost of the house, food, etc. with us. We felt bad for them, so agreed. I'd spent time with them before, and it was fine in short stints, and we had already known his nephew was loud. But oh my god, he was a nightmare. He screamed constantly, every day, 4 a.m. to 7 p.m., screaming no matter what mood he was in. He also constantly misbehaved. He hit people, threw toys, threw food, drinks, etc. He went into my bag and pulled out my makeup and stuck his fingers all in it. We had every other day to ourselves, but whenever we were in the house with him, it was just constant stress, not what anyone wants from a holiday. We've booked the same place again for August, hopefully if restrictions are lifted, fully refundable if not. We weren't going to say to them we were going, but my boyfriend mentioned offhand, and she texted us a few days ago to ask if they could come again. Boyfriend said to them it's been a tough year, and we wanted some alone time together. She said we wouldn't need to spend time going out together. We could just share the house. Brother-in-law lost his job this year, and they really need this as a family break, and her mom agreed to pay for them all to go. She actually agreed to give them £400 for a holiday of their choice, but coming with us means they can save money and can actually go away rather than camping or something in the UK. Sister-in-law said we would be like ships in the night, was the way she described what it would be like. That might be what they intended, but even my boyfriend's mom has admitted that nephew is no better now than he was a few years ago. If anything, he's worse now. My boyfriend said to her he would ask me, but he wasn't sure it would work. Separately, he then said to me he thinks we should say yes, mainly because we don't really have a way of saying no now. He feels bad because it's his sister, and he knows they're having a tough time, which I get, but we deserve a holiday too. He's not going to go behind my back and say yes, or blame it on me, but he does think we're being a bit cruel saying no. If it were up to me, I would just be upfront with them and say we don't want to because of the way nephew behaved last time, and we want a relaxing holiday. But I understand from my boyfriend's perspective, this isn't something he feels he can say to his sister. I've said I would say it, but would this make me a jerk if I was honest about not wanting to go because of her son? Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know.
I don't blame you one bit. That kid sounds like a nightmare.
Neighbors were constantly loud, so I got a bit louder at the wrong time of the year. Throughout the year, I had noisy and thoughtless neighbors. They would often have loud parties that would go to the early hours of the morning. They were all in university. This becomes important later on. I had called the police, called the apartment manager. No one would do anything about it. I was losing sleep, and my work was becoming affected as well. I had spoken to them directly, and they completely disregarded me and refused to just shut up. This went on for months, and I was writing out my lease to move somewhere else. One day, I'm sitting watching TV on a nice spring day, and I have my windows wide open, and I hear one of the neighbor's friends come over, and he asks if he's coming out, and he says no, he needs to study for an important test he's taking the next day. This little snippet of information was all I needed. His friend leaves, and he closes the door. I then proceeded to take my speakers and put them up against the walls, near where I knew his desk was. There were balconies outside, so I often saw him studying there. And I began to blare Merzbow and death metal straight at the wall. I put on my noise-canceling headphones and just blasted it as loud as possible for hours. My landlord actually ended up coming into the apartment because I didn't hear him knocking, and he's obviously flipping out. But I'm like, nah, you never did anything when I complained, so good luck. Call the cops. My lease was set to be up soon anyway, and I was leaving the state, so forget y'all. So landlord leaves, and I'm still amped up on adrenaline, and it's quiet for maybe 20 minutes, and I intermittently start blasting music. The neighbor comes over irate, screaming that he has this big test and he's gotta pass it, apparently a medical student, and I just laughed in his face and said, I don't hear anything. He then makes a fantastic mistake, which was telling me he didn't just have a final tomorrow, but it was finals week. Oh, great. Added stress for the week equals the fact that I continue doing this every night for the rest of the week. I set my alarm to go off every 30 minutes, and I would bang on the walls with a hammer and blast music, and I was going a bit crazy as well. But that didn't matter, because I was ruining this guy's life. About day 3 of no sleep for anyone, he comes over screaming about how in India his family will disown him and all this nonsense, which just made me laugh, and just said the same thing over and over, that I didn't hear the music, and I think it was coming from somewhere else. I basically just started gaslighting him, acting really nice when he came over in a rage. That weekend, the landlord gave me some BS notice that I had to leave, which I was fine with, because he broke my lease, and I wanted to get out anyway. So I got my deposit back. On the last morning I was there, I was moving out, and I knocked on the jerk neighbor's door at like 8 a.m. and asked him if he wanted this old air conditioner I was going to throw out otherwise. He was totally in a daze, and I don't know if he really understood what was happening any longer. Anyway, hopefully I messed up his life and his future a bit.
He should have shut up when I told him numerous times. I experienced something awesome very early on in my customer service career. Shortly after graduating from high school, I got a job working as a waitress at a local restaurant. It was a pretty popular place, but it really boomed during the holiday season. A few days before Christmas, a woman came in wanting to pay for and pick up a phone order. Now, to be clear, there were 7 pages of takeout orders. Each page had about 10 to 13 orders. I asked for the name on the order, and she gives me 3, saying that she isn't sure who placed the order and she's just in charge of picking it up. I look through each page and find a few matches. None are in the correct order, though. As I reach the last page, I tell her that we don't have any more orders with those names and ask if there's another that it might be under. At this point, she's visibly annoyed and gives me another 2 that it might be under. I scroll back to the first page and start searching again. I find another match, but again, it's in the wrong order. Now she's actually angry. The conversation goes something like this. Me: I'm so sorry, we don't have any more matches for those names. Her:
Well, it's got to be one of them. I don't know why this is so hard for you.
Me: Maybe it would be easier to search for the order itself. What exactly are you picking up? Her:
How am I supposed to know that? I didn't place the order. It's your job to check me out and just get it to me. Why is this so hard for you?
Me: Well, unless there's another name to search for, I'm not sure what else I can do for you. There were about 75 orders placed for this weekend, and I don't have any other way to know which is yours.
Are you kidding me? It shouldn't be this complicated. Are you stupid or something? You're working a register. It cannot be that hard.
Me: Okay, how about I read the names of each order, and you let me know when something sounds familiar. We can go through each order that way.
Fine. If that's what you have to do your job, then just waste my time, I guess.
I get about halfway through the first page. Me: Company X? Her:
That's it.
I smile wide, a genuine and true smile ear to ear. Me: Oh, do you work at Company X? Her:
Not that it's any of your business, but yes. Now hurry up. This is taking way longer than it should have. Is it even ready yet?
Me: Do you know the owner, Mr. X? Her:
Yes, he's the one who organized the party. Why?
Me: That's my dad. Smiling even wider than I thought possible. I'll have to tell him about this. What a small world. Her: The color visibly draining from her face.
You're...
Me: Yup, my dad. Who would have known? I'm actually going on my 30 when I'm done here. I'll have to give him a call. I'm sure he'll love to hear all about this. Before she had a chance to respond, I turned around to grab her food. I spent the rest of that transaction just positively glowing, basking in her silent panic, before saying, Goodbye, have a wonderful day. I'll be sure to tell my dad that you said hi. It was beautiful. Edit: I told my dad about it, and he was absolutely livid. Mostly about the fact that she would dare to speak to someone in that way, while actively representing the company. He didn't fire her, but she was given a severe warning and was put onto probation. She didn't last long though. Less than 2 weeks later, she lost the company a pretty big client by responding very rudely via email. Honestly, I may be biased, but I think that the company is better off without her. Edit 2. Wow, didn't expect this to blow up like this. This is my first post to this sub, and I wasn't even sure that it would fit. Thank you to everyone for the comments and awards. I appreciate it, really. Don't work overtime? No problem, boss. I, 22, female, work for a large retail chain in one of their smaller stores. Not a mega store, but still sizable. Each department has multiple people: manager, controller, and usually 2 to 4 floor workers. I'm one of the 2 floor workers in my section, and we can normally handle the deliveries, floor work, restocking, and customer service. That was until January. The manager took his time off. He worked through the festive season. The controller caught the dreaded you-know-what, and the other worker also chose to take her off time. She wasn't aware of the situation. This left little me to do the work of 4 people all by myself. With no manager, the merchandisers who could have helped me acted like my section no longer existed. I ended up working overtime through January and put in around 12 extra hours to ensure the store was at the expected level of order. Except they didn't pay me for the overtime. When I asked questions, the HR manager yelled at me, told me my overtime approval ended at the end of December. Convenient. And best of all, he told me that I should quit if I'm going to have such a big mouth. It was made very clear that the extra work was not appreciated and they just saw an opportunity for free labor. This is a shortened version of what happened.
The man literally had me in tears, and this was in front of customers, but that's a story for another day. Anyway, cool. Time for some malicious compliance. I won't do any more overtime. Just the next month, an important visit was scheduled. The big boss was coming to check on us, and we had to be perfect. Here's the catch. My deliveries come in at 6 a.m. and 4 p.m. most days. They should be unpacked immediately. This is a 2-hour job at minimum. Yeah, my shift is 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. So I just stopped helping with the second delivery, even if there was no one there to do it. I went home. Shelves a mess? Go home. No staff? Go home. Delivery coming in? Nah, go home. My manager asked me why I was no longer doing my job like I used to. I told them what the HR manager said, also told my union rep. Guess who's not allowed to talk to me without a witness present now? Edit. I didn't get my overtime and pay. I'm in South Africa, and the labor laws here often favor employers. I spoke to the union rep, and all she could pull was to have an official warning put in the HR manager's file, and he's no longer allowed to talk to me without a witness of my choosing present. He's not even allowed to greet me. My father, now retired, was a union rep for over 10 years. He looked into it, and they found a loophole to get away with it by saying my overtime approval ended in December and it was my responsibility to ask. They only told me when I queried the short pay on the 4th of February. I've learned a hard lesson, but one I will not forget. Breaks are 15 and 25 minutes, and when we say, Karen demands shopper dress more appropriately. This happened this morning between 9 and 10 a.m. I went to the supermarket to grab a few things for lunch and dinner. It's early and slow, so the store only had the self-checkout and one register open. As I got to the register, I see a young woman, early 20s, with a sleeping baby in her arms and a basket with formula, diapers, over-the-counter baby items for rashes, and several prescriptions that were paid for at the pharmacy. The girl gets to the register before me, and then I saw the rampaging Karen come out of the aisle right in front of me. I knew there'd be trouble from the oversized sunglasses, Karen haircut, yoga pants 3 sizes smaller than they should have been, that I'll bet have never seen the inside of a gym or a yoga studio, and the very low-cut top that showed off a lot of skin that no one I knew wanted to see. She has maybe a dozen items in her cart. With the current situation, the clerk, the 20-something-year-old, and I are wearing the required masks. But of course, Karen can't be bothered. The store has markings on the floor for social distancing, but of course, that doesn't apply to the wild Karen. The young mother is holding the sleeping baby and trying to fish her wallet out of her small purse, while also holding the diaper bag and the usual baby accessories. The cashier hasn't even finished ringing the girl up when the wild Karen starts in a loud voice complaining about unprepared shoppers not even having their money ready. Karen's cart is almost touching the 20-something's leg. Naturally, Karen's complaint at full volume had the unfortunate effect of waking the sleeping infant, who registered his displeasure by letting anyone within hearing distance know. The mother was attempting to calm him down and get her wallet out of her purse. The fact that Karen had to wait and now had to listen to the infant she woke up caused another nasty tirade. I'm in line behind Karen at this point, and then she gets on my last nerve. She's been breathing the cashier for not being fast enough, and then God only knows what lack of brain cells caused her to do this, but snaps at the young mother that she should make the brat be quiet, and then decided to tell the girl, while snapping, that if she didn't dress like that, she wouldn't have gotten knocked up, since it was obvious that her jeans were too tight, as was her top. For goodness sake, she had a baby a couple of months before. The young mother was beet red, the cashier was in shock, the infant, not liking the noise, was letting it be known that he wasn't happy, and Karen had gotten on my last nerve, and being old, sick, and in a bad mood, and with worse temper, I let loose. I slipped up past Karen and tossed my card to the cashier and told them the young lady's bill is on me. That got Karen to start again, only for me to loudly say, "Shut up. I'm as tired of your mouth as the little man is." That stunned Karen, who only sputters. The young mother thanked me and gave the infant her full attention. Karen is fuming and starts heaving her items onto the belt, but apparently her mouth recovered before her brain. As soon as the cashier finished ringing her up and asked for payment, Karen turns towards me and sneered, "Well, aren't you going to pay for mine as well?" I was done with her and responded, "No, I don't like people who wake up sleeping infants with their big mouths." She huffed and stormed out. I was hoping for an "I demand to speak to the manager," but you can't have everything. I headed to my car and was pulling out of the parking lot when I saw the young mother sitting at the bus stop holding the infant. Buses out where I live run every hour, so I decided to offer her a ride. Turns out she lived only a couple of miles away, under 5 minutes by car, but a couple of hours on foot carrying a baby and supplies. She took the risk that I could have been crazy since I snapped Karen's tirade. I learned that she and her husband were new to the area, moved here for his job. I asked her about the little man and learned that as her husband got paid, they bought more of the stuff the baby needed, but right now they were making do with what they had. I wrote an address down and told her that if her husband was off Saturday, she should have him bring them to the address for a yard sale with tons of baby stuff my niece was getting rid of, as she had had all the babies she's having and she has everything an infant could need. She told me that she'd do that and thanked me again for everything. I dropped them off and made it home and gave my niece a call describing the girl and infant and telling her to give the couple anything they liked and I'll cover whatever they couldn't afford. I like babies and have no tolerance for Karens. How dare anyone be in front of her or not dress according to your standards? You're nuts. Am I the jerk for not wanting to pay for my stepchildren's private school? I, 30 female, have 2 step kiddos, both girls who are 9 and 11. They're from my husband's, 51 male, previous marriage. I've been in their lives for over 5 years and we are a happy unit. Husband shares custody 50-50 with his ex-wife, who I'll call Candy. When husband and Candy got a divorce, they agreed to keep the girls in a private Catholic school they had been attending since pre-K. Last year, Candy moved to a town 30 minutes away and insisted the girls go to a school closer to her home. We live in a major city, so traffic and construction add to this time depending on time of the day. Husband and I agreed, but insisted we discuss public school options as both kids are growing tired of Catholic school and have expressed repeated interest in public school. Candy brought up the divorce decree and demanded they go to the Catholic school close to her new house and offered to pay full tuition, over $12,000. We tried to tell Candy that we needed to agree on what's best for the girls, and since her new area has highly rated public schools, we will concede the location but insist on a public school or even staying at their old school for another year. She enrolled them in the new Catholic school anyway. Today, the school is asking parents for next year's tuition. Candy has asked us to pay for half. I said, how about none of us pay tuition and the girls go to public school like we discussed last year? Not maliciously or in front of the kids. Husband wants to pay up just to keep the peace, but I'm not interested in paying tuition for a school I don't like and the girls don't like. Am I the jerk? Well, who do you agree with? OP or Candy? Please let us know.
Candy doesn't sound like a very suiting name for her.
No, your entitled brat can't go on our private beach trip. Okay, people of Reddit, I thought I'd share a story from when I was younger and when my kids were still young. So this takes place in the summer of 1975. At the time, my sons were 9 and 7. Also, they were in the Cub Scouts. Like most kids, they quickly made friends with the other kids, and as a dad, I made friends with the other dads that volunteered. Most of us got along well with the families, except for the entitled mother and her son. The mother was extremely clueless about her own son and basically refused to parent him. She was more into the lifestyle of a mom, being in mommy groups and spending her husband's money rather than being a good parent to her son. The dad was a good person, but worked a lot, so he was absent. Her 9-year-old son was a notorious bully. He was overly aggressive. He hit others and stole from them. He was extremely disrespectful toward other adults. When the other parents brought this up, she would make constant excuses for him.
He's just a boy. He's just expressing himself. Your kid started it.
What made it worse was that the entitled mother would pacify her son's behavior with sweets, toys, and other things that he wanted. Because of this, the other parents and I didn't invite the mother and her son to events that took place outside of Scouts. The entitled mother would often call our home about getting sleepovers or having her kid play with ours, which we were adamant about not happening. If we didn't give in, she said,
"You're bullying my son by excluding him. How could you do that to a kid?"
She also threatened to call the governor for discrimination because she's a Baptist. So late June, the other parents and I were talking about a beach trip to Santa Cruz and bringing our families with us. We talked through everything among the other 10 moms and dads about planning this out. The entitled mother must have overheard what we were saying because she just came over with her son and said,
"Can you take my son with you? I have to do something with my husband."
Me, what? Where?
"To Santa Cruz."
No. You and your son are not invited. This is a friends-only trip. Entitled kid,
"You're a big meanie.
kicks me in the leg and runs away. Entitled mother.
Look what you did. You hate her?
She leaves and chases after him. Because this was a big trip, we decided to go shopping and hit the road on Friday. We had to do lots of shopping in bulk to reasonably feed 12 adults and 18 kids. My wife and I, along with 4 other parents, were watching the cars and keeping the kids occupied. For a brief moment, I turned my attention to my car to turn the AC up because my kids said they were hot. And I turn over and the entitled boy is there with his bag and the mom peels out in her station wagon. We're all just in shock, asking ourselves, is this really happening to us? The boy's mother gave him a note that had his allergies and an emergency phone number. We call, no answer. We can't leave the kid here alone, and we're not going to bring him with us, so we opted to call the police. We put the kid in the car to keep him out of the sun, and we made the call. We report entitled mother for what she's done. They sent us an officer out in 15 to 20-ish minutes. The other parents and I go back to our cars to look out for the police. When we get back, entitled boy is pulling my daughter's hair. The reason why? The kids had some snacks in the cooler and didn't want to share them with entitled boy. What later proceeded as we were running to the car is 10 of the boys pull the entitled jerk out and proceed to teach him a lesson. Now, the kids had 2 years of rage towards this kid bottled up inside, so what took place wasn't surprising. The entitled kid is messed up, crying and says that we're all mean and starts demanding food from us. He was yelling and hitting things and said,
I want to go on the trip. I want to go on the trip. I want to go on the trip now.
He kept parroting this over and over again. I yelled to him, shut up, which only made him cry more. Now, I will admit, I was probably in the wrong here, but this was one of the few kids I've truly hated in my life. The police arrived soon after, and we explained what happened. Apparently, he's dropped off at his father's job. The mother received a neglect charge. When she saw what had happened to him, she tried to charge our kids for assault. It was dropped because it was in self-defense. But all in all, my friends and our kids had a great week in Santa Cruz. If you wonder what happened to entitled mom and son, the mom is still married to the dad. We don't talk to her since our kids aged out of scouts. The son is a 55-year-old man-child who is a creep that tries to pick up college girls, and he neglects his 4 kids. Well, that's my story, Reddit. That's all, folks. Have you or anyone you know ever been in Scouts? If not, would you like to try it? Please let us know.
Eagle Scouts for the win.
Am I the jerk for getting mad at my wife for her jokes about me? My wife and I both work. Only difference is she actually goes into the office and I'm still working from home. We have a 10-month-old daughter and I've been basically a stay-at-home dad on top of working my regular day job. It was stressful as heck when my wife finished up her maternity leave, but luckily my work is pretty flexible, so I'm not usually super busy. Most of the day, I'm replying to emails on my phone with my daughter in her carrier or taking conference calls while she's napping. I also do the cleaning around the house because I'm a total neat freak and order or cook dinner too if I have the time. Then in the evenings, my wife takes over so I have some leisure time. On Sunday, we went to have lunch at her sister's house. First time we've all seen each other in a while. They ask us how life's going with a new baby, and my wife starts joking about how the house is a mess when she gets home, and she has to clean it up because I've been too busy playing with our daughter all day to do it myself. When her sister's husband asked how I manage, I admitted it does get overwhelming sometimes, and my wife once again chimed in, saying I call her constantly throughout the day over little things, like not being able to find our daughter's binky, or needing her help because daughter won't stop crying and I have no idea what to do. She also laughed about how every day when she gets home, she just prays I didn't burn the house down. I know it was all said in a lighthearted, joking around way, but it really hurt my feelings. Everyone was chuckling except me, so my wife kissed my cheek and told me not to take it too seriously, and she appreciates that I put in the effort. So I straight up told her, well, I don't appreciate you acting like I'm useless when I'm the one at home taking care of her all day and cleaning the house. My wife didn't know how to respond to that, and we changed the subject. She was in a serious mood after we left because I embarrassed her, and it wouldn't have hurt for me to let her joke around a little because she knows I help out a lot. I've been distant with her, not talking much when she gets home, and she's mad at me for taking it too seriously. Even her sister says I'm overreacting, but I just don't see why she thought it was okay to paint me as the cliche, useless man-child husband. Now I have my wife saying I'm being a bit of a jerk for still holding this against her, and she doesn't see why it's a big deal to me. Part of me just feels hurt and I'd like an apology, but another part wonders if I'm being a jerk for how I acted with her. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know.
I'm glad you gave her a taste of her own medicine, OP. If she doesn't want to be embarrassed, maybe she should stop doing it to others.
Entitled customer thinks I'm rude for not talking. I was reminded of this after listening to some of my videos and some stories about entitled people at supermarkets. I worked at Walmart for a long time when I was younger, and honestly, I loved it. But of course, there's always that one day you just want to ask why some people behave the way they do. It was an early morning, and for some reason or another, I woke up with a scratchy throat, but I wasn't running a fever, and I honestly felt perfectly fine, so I took some vitamin C and went to work. However, before I was an hour into my shift, I had completely lost my voice. I usually worked customer service, but I would need to be able to communicate our policies and such, and of course I couldn't do that without my voice. So they asked if I would mind just being a cashier for that day, and I was good with that. Now, on the register, I would usually always ask how someone's day was, if they found everything that they were looking for, etc. But since I couldn't talk, I just smiled politely, did my job, and went about my day. One lady I spotted in my line seemed like she was having a particularly bad day already, and when working at Walmart, you can usually spot these types of customers from a mile away. I knew before it was her turn, nothing I did was going to make her happy, but at least I didn't have to talk to her, right? Of course, I was bagging her groceries incorrectly. I did it as she instructed, and of course I was taking too long checking her out, because I was forced to rebag everything. She had a ton of coupons, which usually isn't a big deal, but unfortunately most of them were expired, and of course she threw a fit about me refusing to accept them.
I know there is a code you can just type in even though it's expired. Just do your job.
She yelled at me, but I just shook my head no, and typed the code for my manager while focusing on the coupons that did work. Honestly, there is a code that we can type and it will accept any coupon amount, but we only use it when there is a computer issue or for any other reason a valid coupon is not being accepted. We do not use it to validate your expired coupons. She was getting more and more irritated with me, so I was so thankful when my manager showed up to help me out. And of course, this woman started screaming at her too about how I was a worthless employee and I was being rude to her, and began to spout these lies about how I was talking back to her and being disrespectful and mouthy to her, and demanded we honor the coupons she had and blah blah blah.
I deserve compensation.
My manager looked at her confused. Ma'am, OP lost her voice earlier today. She couldn't have said anything to you at all. And furthermore, we don't accept expired coupons under any circumstances. Please pay for your purchase and go, she said.
But
she was embarrassed now, I'm guessing, and still wanted to try and make me the bad person in the scenario.
She was rude though. She didn't even ask if I was having a good day or anything. I feel incredibly unwelcomed by her behavior.
Ma'am, I already told you, she lost her voice. She can't talk today, but isn't sick, so we were letting her work today. Now, please pay and leave, or do I need to call security? She asked. The lady huffed, slammed her card into the machine to pay, and snatched her receipt before storming off. I could honestly swear she was in a bad mood and went shopping so she could take out her anger on the poor cashier, since we really can't fight back. I had seen this display many times before, and I could swear that was exactly what was going on, because they will scream and rant at the dumbest things sometimes, and also when it's not even about their purchases, but the cashier is an easy target, and of course, being a Walmart employee is practically worthless in their Karen vision. My manager turned off my light and told me to finish out the customers in my line and then go work in claims for the rest of the day, which was just filling out paperwork and taking items from customer service either to the claims department or to put them back on the floor. It was better, and I didn't have to interact with customers. This was the first time I was accused of being rude, though without even opening my mouth. Have you ever had a customer put in a complaint about you? If so, what were they saying? Please let us know.
People call me rude all the time, and I still don't know why.
Am I the jerk for embarrassing my husband and leaving my party and going home? Last Saturday, me, my husband, and 8 of our friends went to a local pub to celebrate my 40th birthday. Restrictions where I live are loosened, so we thought we would go and have a nice meal and chat with friends that we haven't been able to spend time with in over a year. I'm very introverted and shy. I do not like large groups of people, and I start getting anxious and having trouble breathing in very loud environments. My husband knows this and is aware of this and has been throughout the entirety of our 18-year marriage. When we go to the restaurant, he was acting very odd. I just chalked it up to it being our first time in a restaurant in over a year. Right after we finished eating, he excused himself to go to the restroom. About 5 minutes later, he returns with a giant balloon bouquet, a cake, and a line of waitstaff behind him clapping and singing. All of our friends at the table were recording me on their phones. People at other tables were clapping, and all I wanted to do was crawl under the table and hide. The noise was unbearable to me. I started sweating and shaking and couldn't breathe, so I excused myself from the table and I left the restaurant. I took an Uber home and left my husband at the restaurant. He drove his car with everyone else. When I got home, I just laid in bed and cried. I felt humiliated. He came home an hour later yelling at me and accusing me of embarrassing him. I yelled back that he knew I did not like things like that, and he knows how I feel about it. I told him that he completely humiliated me in front of all of our friends and complete strangers. He said that it was my 40th birthday and I should be grateful to him for planning such an event. I told him I was not grateful, that he did not consider my feelings at all, and that he truly betrayed me by doing this. He's currently not speaking to me. He says that I need to send an apology text to all of our friends and make things right. He also says that he will not speak to me until I apologize to him for making a scene at the restaurant. Am I the jerk for leaving the restaurant and embarrassing him? Mechanic in an auto parts store. I am a mechanic in a chain-type shop. I work on my own cars and on other people's cars on the side. I go to the same auto parts store very often. I live about an hour away from the shop I work in and about 20 minutes from the auto parts store I like to shop in. I go to work, have a long day of stress, then head towards home, but stop at the parts store to get brake pads and rotors for my personal car. I walk in wearing my mechanic shirt from work, which is a dark blue, while the store uniform is a bright green. I used to work in the auto parts store company. Not this store, but the workers here know me and don't mind me using their computers to find parts in the system. It makes it easier for them to get my stuff for me by not having to spend the 20 minutes going through the process of asking questions and looking up the parts. I walk in and go straight to the computer that's unused at the moment. I pull up all the brake parts I needed and then walk down an aisle and get a can of brake grease and a few tools, walk back to the counter and wait for an employee to come over to help. They know I don't mind waiting and letting them handle the rest of the customers in line. As I'm standing there waiting, I pull up a second window on the system and start looking for wheel bearings for my car for the next big repair task. A lady comes in and sees me without a customer in front of me and walks right up to me and starts listing off things she wanted. I said, "Miss, I don't work here. I'm just a customer." She claims,
"You are behind the counter. You must work here."
I go back to the computer screen and continue to look for my parts. She gets mad at me and says,
"I want to speak to your manager."
I reply, "Well, I don't work here, and my manager doesn't work here either." The store manager of the auto parts store walks up, and this lady says,
"So, your manager doesn't work here, but here he is, standing right here?"
The store manager says, "Miss, if you'll step over here to the next computer, I will gladly help you." She says,
"You can start by firing him."
Store manager turns to me and says, "You're fired." I say, "Oh, okay. Well, that sucks. I guess I'll need to find a new job." Lady is smiling and says,
"Serves you right, brat."
Store manager says, "Miss, can you read English?" Lady replies,
"Of course I can."
Store manager stands shoulder to shoulder with me and points to the company names on his shirt. I pick up on this and point to the company name on my shirt. I then say, "Are you colorblind by any chance?" She says,
"No. What does that have to do with anything?"
I point back and forth from the store manager's shirt color to mine. Lady finally looks down at the shirts and sees that she missed the fact that my shirt is a totally different color and it's from a completely different company. She starts babbling like a fish out of water. I turn to store manager and say, "You can handle this one. I'm going to go back to my finding parts." He leads her to the next counter and starts helping the embarrassed lady with the list of parts. After he found all the items, he tells her the price and she starts claiming she can get them at the competitor store across the street for half that price. At this point, I have taken a picture of the screen for the wheel-bearing parts I was looking for and closed that window, and I'm just waiting for an open employee to get the parts and cash me out. I hear her saying this and ask, "So, why are you in here making such a fuss?" Loud enough for her to hear clearly. She barks at me.
"Shut up and stay out of this."
The store manager says, "If you can get a quote from them for less, I will match it." She says,
"Why do I need a quote from them?"
He replies, "Without a written quote for equal parts, I can't price match." She storms out to go across the street, leaving her car in the parking lot. I got my parts and cash out. I go outside and put my parts in my car. I go back to the store's door and start chatting with the store manager while he smokes and I vape. I notice a customer inside buying a battery, and the employee that was helping them is not allowed to work on cars because they're too young. Stupid company will hire a person that they can't train to work in hazardous environments legally, but whatever. The employee asked another employee to install the battery and was told it would be a minute because of the amount of customers in line. I step inside as the customer says, "That's fine, I'll wait." I say from the door, "Excuse me, I'm a mechanic and I'll gladly install the battery for you for free so you don't have to wait." The customer happily agrees and carries the battery out the door. I pull my tools out of my car and start swapping the battery out. Within the 5 minutes it took me to do, the lady comes back across the street with a receipt in hand. The store manager sighs and goes inside waiting for her to come in. Lady walks up to me waving the paper in my face laughing. I tell her to step back and stay out of my face. She drops the laughter and smile when she sees the grip on the ratchet wrench I have that I'm pointing to her with. She goes inside, and after I'd say maybe 3 minutes, she comes storming out of the store and gets in her car, slamming the door, and peels off across the street. The store manager comes out and says to me as I'm putting my tools back into my tool bag, "She's a moron. The price she got was for the basic line of parts when she was asking us for the premium line." I tell the battery customer that he's good to go, and I laughed at what the store manager was saying. The battery customer hands me a 20 and thanks me, saying, "What a jerk," to which I laughed even more. I ended up doing my breaks right there in the parking lot and chatting with the store manager most of the time it took. And he said, "Hopefully she's a lost customer for life," as I was leaving. It was both a good and bad day, but at least it ended with entertainment. Standardized testing. Only read the directions. After seeing a bunch of testing posts from the student perspective, I thought I'd offer one from the teacher perspective. This incident is part of why I decided to teach preschool instead of working in public education. I was finishing my degree in early childhood education and had to spend a full year in a classroom. The first half of the year was spent observing and teaching with the classroom teacher still in the room. The second half was teaching on my own. This also meant that I had to administer the standardized test in the spring. I've always hated standardized tests from the first time I had to take one. I dislike them even more from a teacher point of view. They don't accurately measure anything. They take away the ability to teach fun and cool things because every lesson has to meet a standard, and they are stressful and, in my opinion, harmful to students. My biggest issue is the fact that all students are required to take the grade level test, regardless of their actual learning level. So I had students who were reading at a first grade reading level and were getting intervention to help them catch up, but they were expected to read the entire test by themselves and still score well. I hate how schools use these scores to define students. Some students are allowed waivers or special help during the test, but there are only a certain number allowed per school based on the number of students, and they are reserved for the most impaired students. The week before the test comes, and I was literally handed a packet on what to review with my students for best test performance, along with a packet of information on how to administer the test. Essentially, I read the introduction of the test, demonstrate how to fill in the bubbles, encourage best guess, and a few other things. Once the test is started, the only thing I can do if the students have questions is read the section instructions to them. There are no specifics on how the instructions are to be read. On the day of the test, as expected, some of my students who normally received extra help were struggling. They couldn't understand what they were reading well enough to know what to do. Math was especially difficult for one of my students. Cue the malicious compliance. Because he struggled to read, the story problems were too difficult for him. He couldn't figure out enough of the words to set up the math problem. I wasn't allowed to read any part of the math problems for him. All I could do was read the section instructions, which read something to the effect of, read each problem carefully. Determine whether it requires addition or subtraction to solve the problem. Write the problem in the testing booklet and record your answer on the answer sheet. I don't recall the exact wording, but that was basically it. When he came to me for help, I repeated to him what I was supposed to say, telling him that I can't give any specific help, but I can read the instructions to him. Nowhere did it say I had to read the instructions word for word, or that I couldn't leave any words out. So the first time he needed help, the problem required addition to solve, so I read the instructions. Read each problem carefully. Determine whether it requires, slight pause, addition to solve the problem. The next time he needed help, I read the same, but omitted addition and emphasized subtraction. This didn't come close to giving him the support he should have been getting for this, but it at least gave him an idea of what to do. I wasn't going to let him completely fail because politicians have decided that a test score is more important than the student.
What a wonderful teacher. When schools are losing teachers like her, we have a problem.
Church volunteer thinks she's entitled to my voice. 2 disclaimers before I start. I am the jerk in this situation, and this was years ago. I'm not a Christian, so I don't know much about churches and what the vibe is like being a part of one. But this one time when I was riding the New York subway, this lady and her friends walk into my car, and she says,
"Good morning."
like one of those no-nonsense middle school teachers who expects you to say it back. I didn't know who she thought she was or what she thought I was, but I immediately got a negative attitude from her. When I'm in public, if I don't need to engage with people, I take my glasses off. My prescription isn't that high. I can still see bodies in cars, but I can't see faces, which means that I don't inadvertently make eye contact with people, which to me basically means that I'm alone. When I take my glasses off, I just shut down. I don't see people, I don't hear words, and I don't speak. I blend into the background. On this subway ride, I was standing with one arm around a standing pole. At some point, this church woman did this whole speech about how she's collecting donations for her friend's church, and she and her friends start going around with bags to collect money. She asked every single person for money, and when she got to me, I said nothing. Most people reacted to her in some way, but I just kept standing there. See, if I don't have a reason to say words, and there are no consequences for me not saying words, I just don't say words. I'll look at you, but my lips are in their resting state. Zero reaction. She got all up in my face like,
"Spare some change for the church."
and when I didn't say anything, she started with,
Hello? Excuse me. I'm talking to you, sir. Can you spare change? What's with you? Answer me.
and she just berated me like this for a whole 4 minutes before she gave up. At no point did it cross her head that there might have been a valid reason for me not reacting. What if I didn't speak the language? What if I was mute? What if I was deaf? What if I just didn't want to talk to her? Like it was such a serious thing for her to get this donation from me, or the disrespect of not being responded to was so high she had to escalate. You are not entitled to my voice. I can choose not to speak to you, and there's nothing you can do. Would it have been better if I did say something? Yes, it's always going to be better if you do what everybody tells you to, but that doesn't mean you have to. Sick kid at the self-checkout. Cast. We've got me, we've got the good mom, we've got the sick kid, and the rich man. About 14 years ago now, I was working at my local Walmart, put in charge of watching the self-checkout on a slow day. I will admit that back then I was inexperienced with people and lazy, but my few months there had taught me a lot about how nasty folks can get. Good mom comes rushing to the self-checkout with sick kid in her cart. He does not look well, and I hear him saying as they come up, "I don't feel good, Mom. I want to go home." Good mom clearly understands that her kid has become sicker since they came in and is trying to rush to get him home now. She's trying to soothe him while simultaneously fumbling her groceries and bare essentials like soup and boxes of tissues. "I know, sweetie. I'm sorry. Mommy is going as fast as she can." Well, along comes rich man. He has on what has to be the most expensive jacket I have ever seen. Full business, gold watch, tie, pricey shoes, perfect haircut, fit, carrying a lot of coffee. Everything about him makes me glad this is self-checkout because my track record with rich folk treating me bad here is almost 100%. He begins checking out directly across from good mom and sick kid, his back facing them. Suddenly, sick kid starts to squirm and look around wildly. Mom, I need the restroom." Good mom looks up from the checkout and sees sick kid is not going to make it through her checkout. She practically flies around the cart, picks him up, and he projectile vomits across the self-checkout all over rich man's expensive jacket. My jaw drops. It can't be real. As I begin to react, I'm also watching rich man. He drops his coffee and is stunned for a moment when something I was not ready for happens. He turns around, quickly removing the jacket, dumps it on the floor, and walks quickly over to good mom and sick kid, kneeling because they are now on the ground. Good mom comforting her crying kid with her eyes practically begging for mercy at this point. Rich man. "Is he okay?" I walk up with towels already on the radio for cleanup and hand him one. He uses it to help clean up good mom. Good mom. "He might have the stomach flu. I just needed to pick up some things to take care of him. I'm so sorry." Rich man. "It's okay. Let's get him cleaned up." Good mom seems to finally really see the man and how he's dressed for the first time and what happened to him. "Oh my god, do you work here?" Rich man, wiping vomit off her back while I start on the floor.
No, ma'am. Just a dad myself. Hate to see a kid not feeling well.
Good mom was so embarrassed that she didn't really speak again other than a meager thank you as we finished cleaning up and Rich man helped her finish checking out personally. I helped him put his certainly ruined jacket in a garbage bag to take home and he checked out as well. I asked him if there was anything else I could do for him and Rich man politely declined and left the store. I will never forget how that man reacted that day. For all his obvious wealth, he was his last priority at that moment, even as a victim himself. He didn't complain about the mess or that he might get the kid's flu or his ruined jacket, nothing. And he certainly did more to help than me, the actual employee. I took this lesson to heart for all future interactions with people, and it has made a tremendous difference as I became a father myself. Thanks for reading. Karen used my sonogram to trick her ex into thinking she was pregnant. Hello everyone, I'm 27, female. My husband and I found out 2 months ago we are expecting our first baby. Last week, we officially announced it via text and phone calls to our friends and family. The next day at work, I found out that one of my coworkers had taken the photo of my sonogram I had sent them in the group text. Someone had asked to see it and posted it on her social media to fool her ex-boyfriend, who she broke up with a few weeks ago, into thinking that she was pregnant. I never wanted my sonogram on the internet. I don't have a Facebook or an Instagram or anything like that, and I feel extremely uncomfortable that it's out there without me being able to control the audience of who's looking at it. Also, this seems like an extremely cruel trick to play on someone, and she used my sonogram as a prop for a mean joke. When I expressed that I was upset to my coworker, she said I was being dramatic, and I'm just looking for something to be upset over. She said she covered up all identifying information and that it was only up for a few hours, and she told her ex-boyfriend the truth after making him sweat for a bit. Are pregnancy hormones making me more upset about this than I should be? Am I the jerk? Well, who do you agree with? OP or her coworker? Please let us know.
I'd report that to HR.
The time my employees got mad at me for firing a rude waitress. This happened a couple years ago, but I randomly was thinking about it and thought you guys might get a kick out of the ridiculousness. I had this employee who was a woman in her late 30s or early 40s and was your stereotypical mom bee. I'm a good deal younger than her, and at the time, I was like 26 or 27. Right away, it became clear that she had an issue answering to a woman much younger than her. She talked back a lot and made it clear she felt like she knew more than me and shouldn't have to listen to me when she disagreed. She would frequently bring up the fact I had no kids and she had 4 to disregard my management abilities as if it was in any way relevant. Here's just a couple anecdotes of what I regularly dealt with from her. We had a problem with employees being on their phones excessively, her being one of the worst offenders. I did an employee meeting where I reminded everyone they weren't allowed to be on their phones at all, and we would be a lot more strict about that moving forward. She interrupted my speech to say,
Well, the problem is your generation can't handle being off their phones for more than 2 minutes.
I pointed out that she was on her phone all the time too, and her reply was,
It's different. When I'm on my phone, I'm looking at things for my kids, not trying to hook up on Tinder or play Candy Crush.
I told her the reason people were on their phones didn't matter unless it was an actual emergency, and she rolled her eyes. She tried to argue with me about the fact I would only schedule her during the day and not nights. Nights are more lucrative because customers buy more alcohol drinks, thus higher tips. I reminded her that when she took the job, she was signing up specifically for day shifts, and most of my waitresses are college students and have class during the day, so there's not any flexibility with their scheduling requirements. She proceeded to yell at me that her desires should trump theirs because she's a mom and she needs more money than them, and slammed my office door shut behind her when I wouldn't cave. The final straw was that I heard from one of the waitresses, who I'm very close to, about how she would talk about how she didn't respect me as a manager and often brought up my lack of desire for kids. She would also apparently say things like,
I'm not going to take orders from someone who hasn't even matured past the I don't want kids phase.
Between the constant blatant disrespect and the fact she was barely a passable waitress anyway, I decided to fire her. 2 waitresses confronted me, telling me it was wrong of me to fire her and begged me to give her job back. They had no defense for her crappiness, only she has 4 kids. If she has 4 kids dependent on her, it's on her that she repeatedly treated her boss like total crap. It's not like I fired her over one incident. There were countless instances of horrid behavior and blatant disregard for authority that she openly and shamelessly stated was rooted in ageism and my maternal status. So yeah, it's a shame that her kids had to suffer for their mom's behavior, but that's her responsibility, and I have no regrets for throwing out the trash. Well, what do you think? Was it wrong for OP to fire this waitress or not? Please let us know.
I'd get rid of the others too. Anyone who makes excuses for an idiot like her isn't worth keeping around.
Because I didn't want to eat glass-flavored sushi? This is a slightly older story, and while I remember a few pretty specific lines that my friend and I still joke about, most of this is generally paraphrased. Back when I was graduating high school, my mom informed me that my graduation gift was going to be a trip to Disney and that my best friend, Bella, could come too. So keep in mind, Bella was 18 and I turned 18 the next month. We spent most of our time in the Epcot showcase, usually Japan. We had the pass to skip around from park to park and opted to eat in Epcot, Japan nearly every day. Since we had the meal plan package, we had been given a few snack options to use through the week. Honestly, the food we would eat during the meals was so much food that we never really used any of the snack during the majority of the week. So we hatched a plan the last week to use the remainder of our snack options on sushi and pastries from Epcot, France after we got lunch at our usual spot. We popped into the small eatery in Epcot, Japan and picked a table near the front. We had started to eat when entitled Dad, okay-ish wife, and their 2 kids came in and flocked to the table next to us. The kids don't play a huge part since one was pretty much a toddler in a stroller and the other couldn't have been older than like maybe 5. They sit down and grab a high chair for the toddler. Entitled Dad then tried to wrestle with this massive mech of a stroller. I think he was trying to fold it down smaller and was getting stressed, so he's fiddling and yanking at random sections of it. Well, his annoyance clearly takes over and jerks what I think was the handle of the stroller back. He doesn't quite manage this well and ends up launching his hand back from the momentum. This was enough to punch a hole straight through the paper lantern light above the table. Now, this may not have been a massive problem had there not been a very clear sound of glass shattering. The poor lantern was hanging loop-sided from a thread. The family collectively stared at the lantern for a few moments before they quickly packed up their kids and moved to a table on the other side of the small eatery. Bella and I sat there in disbelief, staring at the light fixture that looked like it would fall over any second. We thought over telling someone, thinking maybe the family would do it. But once they hunkered down to eat, we lost all faith in that. The tables were close enough at this time that if it fell, it would either come down directly on us, or if we were lucky, fall to the other side of the table. Either way, it would be a glass mess that someone would have to clean up. A lady working there walked by us, and we briefly stopped her, quietly pointed to the lantern, and saying we saw someone accidentally break it. I specifically did not point the family out. She looked stunned, thanked us, shuffled away, set one of those wet floor signs at the table to have people avoid sitting there, and we saw her start a conversation with someone on the other side of the food service counter. We felt good about that, went back to eating, and everything was great. Only, no, not really. This story wouldn't be here if that's how it went. I see Bella make a confused face while looking at something behind me, so I look behind me, only to be looking up at Entitled Dad from my seat. Entitled Dad.
Why in the world did you think that was your business?
Bella and I just stared at him, confused for a minute. Neither of us was really sure what to say to a complete stranger. This is when he decided to pronounce it out, word by word, like we were stupid.
Why in the world do you think that was your business?
Me. I heard you the first time. It's not like I mentioned you're the one who did it. I thought that maybe this is what he was concerned about, since maybe he thought he may need to pay for it or something. Entitled Dad.
That's not what I asked you. Why in the world do you think that was your business?
Nee, looking around confused. I didn't want it to fall on someone?
Still not what I asked. How was this your business?
I was a bit confused how that didn't answer his question, and we just had a few seconds of staring competition before it just dawned on me that he was just crazy. Nee. Because I don't want to eat glass-flavored sushi?
You should have just ignored it. It wasn't your problem.
At this point, I was over being yelled at by some dude I didn't know, with a weird need to act like he's my dad. Nee. I know you think you can say whatever you want to us because you're 1,000 years old and you think everyone is younger than you. But man, you broke it and ran away. The only person you should be mad at is yourself because you can't use your adult words to talk to a server about something that you broke. And instead, you need to yell at someone less than half your age to feel like you control the situation. Super paraphrased here, but I did hit on these points to some degree. I just don't remember the exact words. I could tell he was winding up to yell back when OK Wife stepped in, calling him back to the table. He turned around to argue with her, and at this point, we just decided to yeet out. No management or police, but yikes, that was a weird moment. All good though. We ate so much sushi and pastries that night, we couldn't manage dinner later. Speaking of Disneyland, have you ever been to Disneyland? Or how about Disney World? Please let us know.
Knott's Berry Farm for the win, bruh.
How I achieved malicious compliance with tea. Hey y'all, I thought I would share one of my favorite stories of following someone's request and making them rethink their words. The main players are me, my younger brother, and the teacher who we will call Mr. Shane. This happened in high school in my senior year and is my favorite story of being a smarty. We had this teacher we will call Mr. Shane. He was an older, very strict teacher who came to my rural Midwest town from inner city Chicago, so we thought he could handle just about anything a student threw at him. No one liked Mr. Shane. He was rude, loud, and for him, if you didn't do what he said, it was a one-way ticket to the office. Even the principal got tired of him sometimes. I was a quiet, nerdy, metalhead teenager who was on track to graduate early and earn a couple awards from the district. I put forth effort to get along with everyone. My younger brother hated Mr. Shane for many reasons, like reading mine and his IEP's very confidential stuff normally in front of the class and managed to get away with it. Needless to say, Mr. Shane was incredibly unpopular. I used to bring a can of Arizona tea with me to school because it's dirt cheap and actually pretty tasty. If you've had it, you will understand how good it can be. Mr. Shane had a problem with this because I'm pretty sure if he wasn't asserting his dominance, he thought he wasn't doing his job. I didn't distract people with the tea, but he was fed up with me and my brother calling him out on his stuff. So one day he told me not to bring any more because I didn't bring enough for everyone else. Challenge accepted. The very next day, I stopped at the grocery store on my way to school and picked up 2 gallons of Arizona green tea, along with red Solo cups. I let slip to one of my best friends that's also in the class, and he could barely contain his excitement. When time for class came, Mr. Shane walked in and looked smug, up until he saw me giving my classmates Arizona green tea. I even offered him a glass, and he exploded in anger and sent me to the office before confiscating all the tea and cups. When I told the secretaries, they laughed and sent me in to talk with the vice principal. The vice principal was incredibly amused by my story, and a few minutes later, my brother came into the office as well with the gallons of tea and cups. Apparently, Mr. Shane lost it and was ranting to himself the rest of the school day over disrespectful students. He stopped teaching after that school year, and I like to think I had a hand in that. Have you ever had a teacher like Mr. Shane? If so, what did they do? Please let us know.
That guy doesn't need to be a teacher. He doesn't need to be anything.
I'm working, but not here. Some background. I'm currently a PA for a TV show, which means I do everything asked of me, and a lot of times that means grocery shopping for the office. The cast in today's adventure. We've got me, male 23. We've got Nice Lady. We've got Confused Gentleman, and of course, Karen. Now I'm an office PA, so I dress a tiny bit nicer than if I was running around on set. Today's outfit was a collared button-down, jeans, and an old Star Wars pullover sweater because it was chilly, and a lanyard with my lot badge around my neck. My boss sent me to a grocery store that rhymes with Jader Toes and handed me a list of hyper-specific salads, wraps, and other goodies for the staff to eat. Boss also tells me the salads with later expiration dates are way in the back. Make sure you grab those, Trans Superboy. Like a good PA, I nod and dash out to my car to head to Jader Toes. Once in the store, I pop in my AirPods to listen to a podcast while shopping and start hunting for these hyper-specific items. I have a list in my hand, am crouched down, and sticking my arm way back under the shelves to grab the salads with the further off expiration dates when a nice lady approaches me and asks if I work there. I apologize and say, "No, sorry," and she's polite, apologizes, and said she wasn't sure, but it kind of looked like I was stalking/moving things around. I say no worries, and she heads on her way. A couple seconds later, as I'm loading extremely specific salads with extremely specific dates on them into my cart, an older, confused gentleman approaches and asks if I know where the greens are. I tell him, "No, sorry, I don't work here." And he says, "Oh, I thought you just helped her." Nice lady was still nearby and jumps to help both of us with a, "Nope, I asked him if he worked here. He doesn't." Confused guy looked like he didn't believe me and looked at my cart. I explained I was a PA at the nearby studio lot and was just shopping for work. He seemed to finally understand, but then turned to Nice Lady to ask her if she knew where his greens were. I laughed and continued on my way, AirPods in my ears, when I hear over the din of my podcast,
Hey, you, excuse me.
I clenched in fear, Reddit. I looked up from my shopping list and I'm greeted with a grade A right out of the stereotype factory LA Karen.
Where's the egg rolls?
No hello. No, you work here? Nothing. Just pure Karen. I don't work here.
Yes, you do. I just saw you help those people.
Nope. They also asked if I work here, and I told them no.
You look like you work here. Where's the egg rolls?
She was blocking my card at this point. I don't work here, so I don't know. Sorry. I don't know if this woman didn't believe me, didn't listen, or just straight up wanted to waste my and her own time. But she once again asked me about her dang egg rolls, and the I don't know exchange repeated. Finally, she started getting mad. I thought she was going to ask for my manager, but instead, she literally stomped her foot and goes,
Why do you look like you work here if you don't work here? You're wearing a badge.
I wanted to question, what about a Star Wars hoodie, Critical Role lanyard, and a work badge for the TV studio down the street? Screamed, I work at Jader Toes. But I didn't. I was too dumbfounded. I'm a PA. I'm working, but not here. Finally, an employee came down the aisle, and Karen set her sights on him.
Do you work here?
She asks the guy wearing a Jader Toes t-shirt, pushing a backroom stock cart of boxes and wearing a name tag. He nods, and Karen once again points at me.
You shouldn't let people in here who look like they work here if they don't work here.
Me and this poor employee share the pained, dead inside look of two people who've had to work with the public. I hope my look came across as apologetic as I felt, but I used this chance to escape and finish up my shopping as quickly as I could. In my line of work, I'm no stranger to very dumb questions and being yelled at, but even Karens make me want to tuck my tail and run. I missed a few items of the shopping list and will probably be sent back to Jader Toes before this workday is done, but I'll be sure to not look like I work there for any future visits. Karen, wherever you are, I hope you never found your egg rolls. Am I the jerk for not allowing my oldest daughter to use my home as her wedding venue? I'm in a pretty bad situation right now. When my stepdaughter got married 2 years ago, she used our home as her wedding venue. We have a meadow in our backyard that's able to accommodate a large number of people, as well as an empty, clean barn that can be set up for dinner tables. My daughter was supposed to marry at another location last year, but because of lockdown, the venue shut down permanently. She's now asked to use my home for the wedding, but I told her my issues with that. I had a restraining order against her mother, my ex, and a few members of her family after threats and harassment were directed towards my wife and myself. The restraining order expired mid-last year, but we haven't heard from them since, but I stayed firm in my decision. This has upset my daughter greatly, and she screamed at me, which she's never done. I offered to give her $15,000 for an alternative venue, but now she's adamant about it being our home. I feel extremely uncomfortable giving my ex and her family access to my home because that's where the washrooms will be. My daughter has put this issue on Facebook, and I now have all my extended family against me. This has also stirred up my ex and her family against me. And worse is that my wife and stepdaughter are now being accused of trying to ruin my daughter's wedding when they haven't played any part in it. I'm planning on giving in and letting my daughter use our home for the wedding later this year, but I'm going to tell my wife and stepdaughter not to be around for it, which I'm sure is going to create a bunch of other issues. Am I the jerk? Update to my post. I messaged my daughter about the outdoor trailer bathrooms, and she has refused and said it was a disgusting idea. She then accused me of treating her worse than my stepdaughter and that I play favorites and that I'm a terrible father. She does not want the wedding at our home anymore and hung up. She's no longer picking up my calls. I got an angry call from my mother who says she's hosting her wedding instead and that I will not be welcomed at the wedding. My father will be walking my daughter down the aisle instead of me. Thanks everyone for the advice. I appreciate it, but I feel like I've made the biggest mistake of my life. I'm completely heartbroken.
Well, what do you think?
Is OP the jerk for not letting his daughter have the wedding at his house or not? Please let us know.
I'd get a restraining order against the daughter too while you're at it. Sounds like she's really turning into her mother.
My goal? Get him evicted. I got a new neighbor at the end of October. I was on vacation and my sister was dog/house sitting for me. She texted me to tell me he was extremely loud. I thought maybe it was just her. I got home from vacation about a week later and haven't had a decent night's sleep since then, unless I crash at my boyfriend's. I've lived here for over 7 years and have had 6 different upstairs neighbors in that time. I've never made a noise complaint before. He slams his door constantly, stomps around the house, plays fetch with his 70-pound dog in the house at 11:30 at night, has loud phone conversations after midnight right above my bedroom, in his bedroom. I've been recording the noise for months now. The landlord has heard some of the recordings. She sent him a notice about a month ago and the noise continued. After he woke me in the middle of the night 3 more times, she sent another notice stating he'd start receiving fines if he disturbed quiet hours again, 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. He was upset when he got the letter and called her to say he can hear me too. Obviously, he can hear me during the day sometimes, but he's claiming he can hear me teaching every day, word for word. Only problem with that is we're back in the building. He's not hearing me teach. I've gone from 6:30 a.m. till about 1 p.m. She told him that quiet hours are what's important. She emailed me to let me know he doesn't think he's that loud and asked me to record future instances. Guess who woke me up at 4 a.m. today? Slammed the door on the way in, stomped through the house, allowed his dog to run the length of a house several times, stomped back down the stairs to take the dog out, slammed the door again and stomped back up. Guess who got the whole thing on video? I emailed the landlord and told her I'd drop off a flash drive with the recording this afternoon. I'm over this jerk. Small update. I spoke with the landlord yesterday. She agreed the noise was ridiculous and told me his attitude at the last contact was that it's an apartment and I need to deal with it because he's not loud. She's going to edit the videos a bit. I kinda curse in a few because I'm so frustrated and exhausted and invite him in to listen to them. Last night at midnight, I was treated to about 3 minutes of loud crap and then equally loud conversation. When there was a lull, I yelled at the ceiling, "Go talk in the living room!" Dead silence after that. Maybe he gets it. Maybe he thinks I'm being a jerk. I don't care. I just want to sleep. Entitled Mom demands 3 free meals. Cast. We've got Entitled Mom, we've got Store Manager, and we've got me. This was many years ago when I was 16 or so, working at Chick-fil-A. Our location was an odd one that had no indoor seating. It was a double drive-through with 2 walk-up windows and a patio outside for eating. This day I was working at one of the walk-up windows when Entitled Mom approached. The conversation went something along these lines. Entitled Mom.
I came through here 30 minutes ago and drove all the way home to realize that you all left out half of my order.
Me. I'm sorry, ma'am. What was missing?
It was a sandwich meal and drink.
Me. I'm sorry for the mistake, ma'am. We'll make that for you now.
I want a refund for it too. And you can remake the whole order since the first part of it is now cold.
Me. Do you have your receipt?
No, I wasn't given one.
At this moment, I realized something was off. It's our policy that we always have to give the receipt to the customer. I wasn't sure what to do, and since I could not process a refund myself, I called my store manager over. I explained the situation to him, and he takes over the conversation. He asks Entitled Mom what side of the drive-thru she came through, and the time to look up her receipt in the system. Store manager. Ma'am, you didn't order 2 meals. You only ordered and paid for the one, which is what you were given.
That is not true. I ordered 2 meals. You just made up a fake receipt.
Store manager verified the last 4 digits of her card, so it was most definitely her receipt. Store manager. I'm sorry, but that is not true. We will be willing to make you a replacement for the first meal, but that's all we can do.
It's not my fault that your employees cannot do their jobs correctly. I ordered 2 meals, and will get them, plus my refund for all my driving around and having to leave my son with a babysitter longer. I will not leave this window until that happens.
It's worth noting at this point that there's a line forming behind Entitled Mom of people looking very uncomfortable with the situation. Store manager continues trying to calmly explain that he can't give away practically 3 free meals since she wanted 2 new meals made plus comp for the first. She continues yelling angrily and refuses to move so that we couldn't be able to help other customers until she got her way. My store manager finally got tired of it and decided to ignore her while telling me to open the other window and start serving the guests behind her. If looks could kill, I'd be gone today. As I called out, "I can help the next guest over here." Karen demands my historical artifact. So, here's a bit of backstory for you. So my parents and I have always been history fanatics and will always be. I had half a shelf in my bedroom designated specifically for World War books. My dad and I did this thing where we went to pawn shops and antique stores on weekends just to look around. This only took place a week ago when my dad and I went to an antique/pawn shop for the first time since lockdown started. Cast. We've got me, a 14-year-old with problems. We've got Entitled Mom, she who must not be named. We've got Entitled Kid, the little brat. We've got the random helpful person. Okay, on to the story. So while in this store, I make a find of a lifetime. A World War I, South African, my country of inhabitants helmet with all the netting inside, and it costs less than the book I bought a week before. It cost R500 for those South Africans out there. I brought it to my dad immediately, and we bought it along with a few other things. Now, my dad needed to do a few other things in the mini mall we were in, but I didn't want to join him, so I went and waited in a store we frequent regularly and browsed while I waited. Now, here's where the horror begins. As I was sitting on one of the chairs they have around the store, casually reading a book I had brought with me, when Entitled Mom and Entitled Kid approach. Now, clearly, Entitled Mom and Entitled Kid were in the antique store at the time we were there, and this is how the conversation played out. Entitled Mom.
Oh, hey, you were at the antique store just now, weren't you?
Me. Yeah? I just wanted to be left alone.
We were looking at an old army helmet for Entitled Kid to play with, but we came back 5 minutes later and it was gone. Do you know anything about who bought it?
Now, this immediately annoyed me. This helmet that she was talking about was clearly the one wrapped in bubble in the bag next to me. That helmet is over 100 years old, and you're going to let a kid play with it? The inner netting will break within a day. Also, why would you want to know who bought it? Well, I was about to find out. Me. Yeah, I bought that helmet, and it really should never be played with. Entitled Mom cut me off.
Oh, fantastic. So you can just give it to me then.
Me. Excuse me?
Yeah, you can just give it to me. There's really nothing you're going to do with it anyway, and you're far too old to be playing with things like that.
Now, I must admit that with how long my hair has gotten, the fact that I wear glasses, and the fact that I have stress permanently etched on my face, I have been told that I look about 2 years older. But this is a World War I helmet. If anything, I'm extremely young to be owning such a treasure. Me. Ma'am, I don't think you understand. This is a historical artifact, not something to be played with. Entitled Mom.
But what else are you going to do with it?
In hindsight, my next remark may have, in her eyes, strengthened her argument. What I should have said was, display it in an appropriate manner. But I didn't, so here goes. Me. That doesn't concern you. Entitled Kid.
Mommy, I want it.
Entitled Mom.
And I will get it for you.
Me. No, you won't, I swear. The look of manic, entitled rage she gave me would scar the faint-hearted for life.
How dare you tell me what I will and won't do? You will give that to Entitled Kid so they can play with it, and you will do it now.
At this point, I had picked up the helmet and was prepared to go see where my dad was, just to get away from this psycho. Then Entitled Mom attacked. They leapt at me, just missing the helmet as I twisted my body, holding her off while she screamed at me. At this point, random helpful person decided to step in. I have no idea if he worked there, as you often see the employees there wearing casual clothes, but he sure didn't act like an employee. Random person. What the heck do you think you're doing to him?
This boy is trying to steal my kid's hat I just bought him. He's a thief and a liar.
Random person. Shut up. I heard the whole thing. I was standing in the aisle behind you. Entitled Mom suddenly started looking nervous that this person was against them. Random person. I hate people like you. Entitled jerks without brain cells. You never change. Entitled Mom.
How dare you swear in front of my kid?
You didn't seem to have a problem with it when you were the one swearing at this guy.
Entitled Mom suddenly looked like she was going to blow, but didn't. Instead, she grabbed Entitled Kid's arm, yanked him towards her, and walked out. Random person, now to me.
I'm sorry about that. I'll speak to people here and get them banned.
Moral: history is important. Speaking of history, do you like history or not really? Please let us know.
I love learning about queens, especially since I'm one myself. Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video.
Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.